Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the City Council meeting for December 20th, 2010 to order. Just a couple things. If you do have a cell phone or a pager, we would appreciate it if you would turn it to the vibrate mode or turn it off. If you do need to take a phone call during the council meeting, we would please ask that before you take the call that you'd actually step out into the hallway so you don't disrupt everyone else in the meeting. Thank you for that. Also, we do have speaker request forms. They look like this. They're to your left, to our right, over in the media table. If you'd please fill that out with your name and also the item on the agenda that you wish to speak to. That way, as we make our way down the agenda, we'll make sure that we do not overlook you. Next thing, as always, is the roll call and determination of quorum. Charlene, if you would, please.
Pearson. Weifenbach. Davis. Adcock. Kroger. Costello.
Here.
Quaker.
Here.
Waugh. Brown. Mason. We have quorum.
Thank you, everyone. Next thing, as always, on the agenda is the invocation. I would ask everyone to please rise. Pastor Scott Craig from the Bighorn Canyon Ministries will be giving her invocation and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor?
Mr. Mayor and City Council, first, if I could just wish you a Merry Christmas, and it's an honor to be with you here tonight. And I want to thank you for the city that you have created, that my family and I enjoy. And we've been here, we moved here from the island of Maui in Hawaii a year and a half ago, and this is by far the favorite place that we have lived. Thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of my family and everybody who's gathered here. Thank you for being a tremendous city. What a community. We're very grateful. Well, let's pray. Father God, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for Rapid City. We're grateful for all that takes place here. Such a marvelous community to be a part of and to call home. And we thank you and remind ourselves that you are more committed to this community than even we are. You care for it, you watch over it, and you watch over and appoint the leaders of it. We thank you for the City Council. I give you thanks right here and now for who they are, for the men and women that you have appointed to lead, to discuss, to guard, to protect, and to hash out so many important matters, all on our behalf. Would you bless them? And especially at this time of year, this Christmas season, I ask God your greatest blessing to be on them, spouses, kids. Reimburse them in ways that this community couldn't possibly do for all of their time, all of their work, their late nights. And we pray tonight, perhaps it wouldn't be one of those late nights. Let them have an efficient meeting, a very successful meeting. I thank you for all the people who are gathered here tonight. I ask your blessing on them, especially at this time of year. And we thank you for Christmas and how we remember what you did 2,000 years ago, coming to earth in person to show us who you really are, that you are someone to run to, not run from. And we give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pastor. Certainly appreciate it. Next thing on the agenda, as always, is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any additional items that need to be added to tonight's agenda that is not on the published agenda? Please turn on your light. Let's go to Alderman Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add a councilman's salary to the agenda, please.
Okay. We're going to call that 67A. That's under council items and liaison reports. Okay, additional items. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Just thank you to the L&I tournament and the people that put it on, please.
Okay. Any additional items to be added to tonight's agenda? So far, we have a 67A and a 67B. Any additional items? If not, the chair will look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to the approval of the minutes. Chair would look for a motion to approve the minutes of the November 29th, 2010 special city council meeting and also the December 6th, 2010 regular council meeting. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is awards and recognitions, and I'll ask GP to come up in front. We have our Veterans of the Month. There we go. As always, it's truly an honor for us to recognize those that have served not only our community, but more specifically our nation in its defense of our freedoms. And today is no exception. In honoring our December 2010 Veteran of the Month, let me read this. In partnership with the Veterans Coordination Commission, we're pleased to present the December 10th Veteran of the Month recognition to Garland P. Carmichael. He goes by GP. He was born in Faith, South Dakota. He graduated from Timberlake High School in May of 1979, which was a good year. Same year I graduated from. And joined the United States Air Force in June and retired after 26 years, retiring at Ellsworth Air Force Base at the grade of Chief Master Sergeant, an E9. Serving in the aircraft structure maintenance career field, he was assigned to various stateside bases as well as overseas bases in Japan, Philippines, and also Saudi Arabia. He became a fabrication chief, chief of quality assurance, and eventually he was the maintenance superintendent of the 28th Maintenance Squadron at Ellsworth Air Force Base. He was Ellsworth Senior NC of the Year in 2001. During his career, he received numerous medals and awards, including the Air Force Accommodation Achievement Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Medal. Let's see here. I mean, it just goes on. Small arms marksmanship. It goes on and on. GP served a long and distinguished and rewarding career in the United States Air Force. His ability to continue to succeed, or his ability to contribute to the success of a squadron was outstanding. During his career, he successfully earned an associate's degree in aircraft maintenance. After retiring, he received a bachelor's degree in business management. He does hold a Federal Aviation Administration airframe and airplant license, and for us pilots, basically means he's a very good mechanic. He currently works for the South Dakota Department of Corrections as a parole officer. He is married to his wife since 1984. He considers the birth of their two children, Courtney and I don't have my glasses, so you have to forgive me. I broke my glasses today. Chelsea. And making Chief Master Sergeant, those were his most notable accomplishments in his life. He is a member of the Retired Enlistment Association, Black Hills Chapter 28. He enthusiastically supports and participates in the affairs of our community, and he's to be commended for his service not only to Rapid City, but also his service to his country. Congratulations, JP. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone. We also typically have employee awards. We do not have any this evening, so we'll move on. We're on to the general public comment period. This is the time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on tonight's agenda. Action will not be taken at tonight's meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by the unanimous vote of the council members present. I do not have any speaker request forms for the public comment period. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to any item that is not on the agenda? Anyone has anything that is not on the agenda? Very good. We will move on. We're on to the non-public hearing items. These are items 3 through 68 inclusive. 3 through 68 inclusive. And the chair will look to open the public comment on items 3 through 53 inclusive, please. Thank you. We have a motion and second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are dealing with the consent items. These are items 3 through 48 inclusive. 3 through 48. Does anyone wish to have any items pulled from the consent calendar? Items 3 through 48, please turn on your light. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker. Item 11, thank you. Additional items. Seeing none, the chair would look for a motion to approve the consent calendar 3 through 48 with the exception of item 11. Thank you. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We are on to item number 11 and the Public Works Committee, and we'll go to Alderman Sam Quaker, who chairs Public Works. Alderman Quaker, could you please read that in?
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 11 is an update on the October 18, 2010 resolution. This was brought forward by Alderman Mason at the Public Works Committee. I offer a motion to acknowledge the report.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to acknowledge the report. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Quaker, would you like to keep the floor?
I would.
Okay, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I would like confirmation of when this resolution will be published.
My understanding, Charlene, was it December 24th, this Friday? Yep, be in this Friday's paper.
So all the words of the memo itself inside the resolution will be published as well?
Yes. Matter of fact, there's an attachment, and absolutely every word that's actually included with the link will be in the resolution.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for this memorandum. I just wanted to make a small comment just explaining what this memo entails, and it's really to encourage employees of the city that they have every right to bring us their questions, suggestions, and concerns without any form of reprisal, and that ensures that their ability to really provide us with good counsel. And I suppose you ask for what you get, and maybe that entails something that we may not like all the time, but this is the ability to approach us with all concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, motion on the floor is for approval dealing with item number 11. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to the end of the consent calendar. We're on to the continued consent calendar. These are items 49 through 53. 49 through 53. Do we need to have any of those pulled? I'll turn to Marcia Elkins. Nope. How about anybody from the council? Items 49 through 53. If not, the chair will look for a motion to approve the continued consent calendar, items 49 through 53 inclusive, per the recommendations in the printed agenda. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. That does take us to the end of the continued consent. We're on to the non-consent items, items 54 through 68. And the chair will look for a motion to open the public comment on items 54 through 68 inclusive, please. Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. We are into the public comment period. Just a reminder, we do time this. We do allow 3 minutes per person, and we do have a number of speaker request forms on, I believe, item number 60. And so what we will do is we will take those in order. I would ask that you would please come forward, identify yourself by name for the record, and then we'll turn the lights on and you'll have 3 minutes. And what I would ask you to do is just keep an eye, and when it turns yellow, that means you have about 30 seconds. And if it turns red, I will just very politely ask you to finish up the remarks within the next 5 or 10 seconds. With that. First speaker request form, looks like, I believe it's a Renee Campa. There again, if you just please identify yourself for the record, then the floor is yours.
My name is Renee Campa, and greetings, Rapid City Council. As the president of Rushmore Soccer Club, and on behalf of those supporting the soccer complex, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Rushmore Soccer Club is pleased to offer its support to the fruition of the complex that will allow our players and parents to be housed in one location. As a sponsoring organization of the high school soccer teams, we also look forward to the day when Rapid City can host the state soccer tournament so that all schools attending can play in one location. At present, Rapid City does not have a single complex that will accommodate the number of games to be played simultaneously that is necessary for the high school tournament. Rushmore Soccer Club lends its offer to plant trees on the premise of the complex and looks forward to the day when the project can be completed. Planting trees for shade and shelter is one way to offer beauty to the complex for generations to come. Rushmore Soccer Club is pleased to be a supporter of the soccer complex. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. We also have a speaker request form from Shay Matkins. And there, if you would please identify yourself for the record, and the floor is yours, ma'am.
Hi, Council. My name is Shay Matkins. I am a parent of a soccer player here in Rapid City. I'm also the president-elect of Rushmore Soccer Club. And I just want to express myself as far as the need that we need for this complex. I have been the coordinator for multiple tournaments here in Rapid City, and we have lost, unfortunately, some of those teams coming here because we don't have one location to host those games. And parents end up running from the west side of town clear over to the valley. So I just want to express how important this is to me, myself, and the organization that I stand behind. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from a Cindy Williams. Ms. Williams, there again, please identify yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Cindy Williams, and I live in Somerset, but I do work in Rapid City and come to Rapid City with my children to participate in the sports programs. And I may be one person, but I represent probably about 100. I help coach 28 U10 girls, so between their 56 parents and several grandparents who regularly come and the siblings, there are a lot of us who are lending our support and would hope that you would put support behind the soccer complex. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. We also have a speaker request form from Cassandra Messmer. And Cassandra, I hope I got your last name right.
Yeah, thank you. Again, my name is Cassandra Messmer. Not only am I here as a parent, I'm also on the Rapid City Youth Soccer League board. But as a parent of 3 boys that play soccer in this town, I would hope that you'd support the complex. You know, I have 9 years in between my children, and so my kids don't play at the same location. They play all over the place, and so we spend a majority of our Saturday driving across town back and forth for games. And I know that a lot of other parents do as well. With the obesity rate as high as it is in children in the United States, I would think that we would really want to get kids to play. And that's, as a board member, that's what we try to do. We want kids to play. And unfortunately, parents are getting frustrated with the more children they have because they have to drive all over the place. This is needed. It is so needed in this town. We get so many complaints out at the valley. It takes, on any given night, if you're there, it takes you a half an hour to get out of that parking lot after games are done because traffic is so extremely compact. If there were to be an accident out there, I can't imagine how long it would take for somebody to be able to get in to help somebody. So we just ask that you please support this project. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from a Mike Micken. Am I close? Okay, very good. Mike, please identify yourself for the record's yours.
Hi, Council. I'm Mike McMeekin. I've been a resident here in Rapid City since 1980 when my dad was stationed here in Ellsworth. I've seen Rapid City grow and change throughout the years. I didn't have soccer when I was growing up, and I graduated from Central in 1990. If I had soccer or soccer complex back then, I probably would have played. I do support the soccer complex. I have 2 children that play soccer, 13 and 11. They'll probably play all the way up until 19 and into college. So having a unified center location so we can have soccer tournaments. Soccer tournaments bring in a lot of revenue to Rapid City, hotels from out of state, out of town. And now over there, we have a lot of hotels accommodating that. A lot of tourist attraction here that brings them here. So it'd be added dollars to the community. So I really do support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We also have a speaker request from Tammy McMeekin. All right, Tammy, why don't you go ahead and come forward and just state your name for the record, and the floor is yours.
Sure. I'm Tammy McMeekin. Mike is my husband. Obviously, we have 2 boys. Mason has played soccer since he was just after he turned 5. He's almost 14. We have played every season of soccer, spring, fall, outdoor, indoor. We support the soccer complex, and we hope that Rapid City supports it as well. It's a good thing for all of our children. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. We also have a speaker request form from Brian Pitts. Mr. Pitts.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Brian Pitts, and not only am I active on the local and regional and national level, but I'm also a product of soccer in Rapid City. I grew up in 1979 here in Rapid City, came with the Ellsworth Air Force Base, and played all my years here. Was a college player at National American University, and it's brought a lot to my life. It's brought a lot to my family. I stand before you tonight speaking on behalf of something that I believe strongly in, and that is community and what we can accomplish as a community. I recognize the patience and allocations of funds that our city has committed to this project. I also understand the patience and allocation of time and money that our soccer community has put forth on this project today. I'm hopeful that you will continue to show the patience and keep allocated funds in place for this soccer sport complex in Rapid City. I understand better than most the devil in the details and all the work that still needs to be done. My largest concern is that we could miss the opportunity to make Rapid City a more appealing place for people to live, visit, and call home. As I stand before you, I can attest to the trials and tribulations of other communities in our state, region, and nation, and I can assure you that none of these complexes were done solely on the backs of small, not-for-profit organizations. While they are able to provide the volunteers, generate interest, and carry the legwork, the financial assistance, in most instances, has come from city, state, and federal dollars. I was here in the audience recently when the Fast Pitch Softball Association made another appeal for city funds. I applaud them for their progress in their sport and their proposal to the city's Vision 2012 funds. I also applaud you for seeing this as a good thing for our community and granting their request. In the same breath, I know and understand without city support, their first 4 fields would not have been built, and their expansion to service their 600-plus players would not have been possible. I know that soccer's 2,000 players, their families, and our numerous volunteers are unified in their desire for a complex and believe that with the donated 80 acres, the city's remaining $3.7 million that is allocated to this project, and the dedication and hard work of the soccer faithful, that we can build and meet the needs of the soccer community as it stands today, and will have the potential to expand as we continue to grow as organizations and a community. I also hope that you remember that these are Vision 2012 dollars, and that many times in life the vision and the reality don't match up perfectly. But it doesn't change the vision, and it doesn't change the reality. We still need a complex, and you can make that happen. This complex will provide many opportunities for us as a soccer community, and will speak volumes about how you, as a city council, view your role in providing a quality of life for all the citizens of Rapid City. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. We also have a speaker request form from a Mike Towie. Good evening, Mike.
Hi, my name's Mike Toohey, and I'm a project manager with Forefront Design. We served as technical advisors for the soccer community. And the reason I came up is there were some issues that came up at the Legal and Finance meeting that I wanted to address. One of them is the floodplain. The original floodplain was designated that way in 1981. Since then, some huge changes have been made to the basin analysis. The flood volumes are no longer as extreme as they were then. We completed a preliminary floodplain report for them. It shows approximately 90 or 95% of the lot out of the floodplain. A huge step for them. They wanted to make sure they could build the future. We showed how they could do it. They also looked at how they could be sustainable. They've talked about pervious improvements, pervious concretes. They're talking about reusing water to irrigate their fields. The fields that you'll see later in the presentation are approximately 220 feet by 330 feet. And that's one field. You'll see two sets of six-packs north and south of the access road. Looking at a typical July in our area, it takes about 87,000 gallons of water to treat or to irrigate those fields a week in July. Totals up about 4.2 million gallons of treated water per month in July. Now, realize that August makes it a little harder and a little more water. Also looks at May and June, that's probably not going to be near as much water. It's a lot of water to irrigate. Sauk Rapid City chose to construct a well, build an irrigation pond to reuse that water as they irrigated, as the rainwater fell. Huge way to conserve water. There's been previous discussions I've heard. I don't know the exact dollar values. I know that there was talk of approximately $100,000 to be charged back to Sauk Rapid City for irrigating their fields, if that's so passed through council. If that went back to the 2,500 kids that are involved, it's about a $40 increase in fees, and I think that would have a ripple effect going down. I think you'd lose kids. In our master planning, we've done things as the floodplain report. We have a traffic study I forwarded on to the city. I'm here for any technical questions when they talk. Please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Mike. Also have a speaker request form from Tony Harrison. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Tony Harrison. I'm the president of Rapid City Youth Soccer League. I'm also a coach of 17 young ladies who love the game. And more importantly than all of that, I'm a dad of 2 young players who love the game more than any sport out there. I'm obviously up here to ask for your support for the complex. It's a critical thing for the soccer folks. And as you're all aware, this has been a long process, but we are certainly excited to get this thing finished, and we want to start that process, finishing it tonight. You're aware of the economic impact a complex like this will have on the city. I don't need to tell you what bringing thousands of people here for tournaments 4 to 5 times a year will do. You know what it'll do. But I also want to let you know, much like Cassandra mentioned earlier, the impact on parents having to drive all over Rapid City to deliver young people to soccer games at all times of the day. In Rapid City Youth Soccer League, we have roughly 2,000 kids registered per season. Not quite, but just about. 97% of those young people are under the age of 14. 90% of them are under the age of 12. This is for the young kids. The high school kids need a place to play for the state tournament. So it's for everybody, but this impacts thousands of young kids and thousands of families. I believe if you approve this tonight, 1 year from now, you'll sit here in your chairs knowing you made the right decision. You will see the product will be well on its way to completion. I think you will realize that was a great decision, and I certainly ask for you to support this tonight and vote to deny item number 60. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Also have a speaker request form from Jackie, I think it's a Bond. Jackie? Good evening, Jackie.
Jackie Bohr. I am also a parent of 3 children. They are grown up. Now one is playing college. But I can tell you, when we travel to tournaments, we go to any other city in the state, other states, we go to one complex. And it's just amazing that Rapid City, as big as we are, that we can't have one complex. I just think that we are missing the boat. And I'm sure hoping that you people will give us the opportunity to show you that this will be a great opportunity for us. I mean, there's every place around the state anymore is getting complexes. And I just think Rapid City needs to be that next place so we can be proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. We also have a speaker request form from Kurt Weitzel. Evening, Kurt. Good evening. There again, if you just identify yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Kurt Weitzel, council members. Just like to speak on behalf of the little guys. And, as I think 17 years ago, I started with soccer in Rapid City. It's a great spring day. Fought tooth and nail to get my son to leave the field. He's had a great time. He's currently in college, but I've got kids, from 9 to 22 who've played soccer in Rapid City. These are a couple of the up-and-comers that are, dependent on your guys' decision. And I really think when we look at what soccer's done for me and my family, it's been pretty phenomenal. I didn't grow up with soccer. It wasn't a real big sport back when I was growing up. And obviously with baseball and basketball and did all those boxing things. And I guess I look at what it can do for our city, and I agree with what these other folks have said in as much that the complex by itself, where you can go and you can participate. We recently got back from a trip in Kansas City where we went to one place and we stayed there all day. And it was just a phenomenal situation. I know Ron's got kids that have played soccer. I know most of you people up here have got kids that have played soccer at one time or another. And just a phenomenal sport. Anything you guys want to add? All right. Do you want a soccer complex? Good answer. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. We also have a speaker request form from Ron Beaumont, item number 60.
Hi, my name is Ron Beaumont. I know many of you on the council, Mr. Mayor. I've been involved in the community in soccer for over 30 years. I've had 9 children who've gone through the program extensively, 2 of which ended up receiving scholarships to major colleges in the area. And I just think it's an opportunity for the city to deliver a product to all the other communities like it in South Dakota and the region. There's no reason in the world why we as a city, as large as we are, can't facilitate this. And I'm just asking for your support to make sure it all happens. I've had, again, I've had children that I've been involved in 30 years. One's 35 and my youngest is 8. I'm busy. Anyhow, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ron. We also have a speaker request form from Jody Massey. Jody?
Hi, I'm Jody Massey. Good evening. I'm here on support of the soccer complex. As a parent who has children that are in the baseball complex, you can go there, you spend all day long. You've got kids on one field and one field, you run back and forth, and it's a very safe place to get out of. One evening I was at the Star of the West complex, and my son was at a football game there, and the weather turned severely bad. I mean, the storm came in. I had one child at home who was deathly afraid the wind came up, and I was so thankful that I didn't have to compete with the soccer parents trying to get out of there. But my daughter does play soccer, and I thought if that would have been her and I would have been way back in the complex, how would I have gotten out of that complex? There's one way in and one way out, and if all of us were trying to get out of that complex, I would have been very worried about the safety of everybody. So I'm here to support the complex, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jody. We also have a speaker request form from a Brett, I'm not going to attempt your last name, lives at 1000 West Boulevard, DeQ. Okay, very good. I trust you. Brett, if you please come forward and identify yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. My name is Brett Duguay, and this is my daughter, Hannah. And we moved to Rapid City in July from Sacramento, California. I have two other children, Lexi, 10, and Zach, 8. And all three of them are playing soccer. Now, Hannah started soccer here when we lived here in 2004 to 2005. We lived here for a year. So she started her soccer, which we hope is a career, right here in Rapid City. And what is a little bit saddening years later, when we are back now probably to live here until they're through college, is that Rapid City really hasn't changed that much in that time. And we really hope that it might have, just having come back, like I say, to live here. When we went to a tournament for her club in Denver at the Dick's Sporting Complex, that place was absolutely amazing. And I know our complex probably will not compare to that one, but there's 3 words that I would like the council to remember in how this impacted myself and Hannah's team and all of the other team members. And that was the prestige of the complex, the camaraderie that the complex generated, and finally the pride in those that were based there and lived there in Denver and hosting all the out-of-town teams. So I'd like to emphasize my support and my family's support for this complex. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We also have a speaker request form from Jeff Norris.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Jeff Norris. I'm a parent of a soccer player. I moved here in about 1981. I'm not a newcomer, obviously, to this community. I'm a newcomer to soccer. I have one daughter that's in soccer. I was a hockey player when I was growing up, and I moved out here. And we all know how that sport's grown. This isn't about hockey, it's about soccer. And I just ask that the council give soccer players the same attention that the hockey players are getting now. I think that's grown to be such a phenomenal thing, and these kids deserve the same shot. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from Ray Wands, 3109 Cadillac Drive. Again, Ray, if you just identify yourself for the record, the floor is yours, sir.
Good evening, Council. My name is Ray Wong. I'm a father of 5 children, 3 of which are playing soccer currently. 4th one's coming up. She's 4 years old. I've been coming back and forth from Rapid City since about year 1980 when I met my wife. Currently, my wife, she's from Rapid City. But you've heard lots of arguments for this complex. I'd like to retouch some of them. I was present at a soccer game at the Starter West complex when a lady was actually backed into by a car. It was so congested in there that the ambulance could not make it in. They had to drive across fields, grass, over curbs just to get to her. Another thing about Rapid City fields is that all the fields in Rapid City are substandard. You go to any other city, even Spearfish has way better fields than Rapid City. This complex is very needed, not only to solve traffic problems, but it's just needed for all the kids. You look at any community in not only Rapid City, but across America, youth soccer is the fastest growing sport in America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We also have a speaker request form from Frank Bettman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I think it's pretty clear the support that the complex has among our community members. And I believe it's also clear that we've got considerable support from council members present and past. What I saw from the Legal and Finance meeting were, and I wasn't there, I apologize, I wasn't able to make it there. I was unable to do so, but my understanding is that the two primary issues that were discussed were, first off, that this was not an adequate location for the complex, and that was one of the reasons why this additional funding was denied. The second reason that I understood was to be the case was that there is some expressed doubt about whether or not Sauk Rapid City would be able to raise the necessary funds to build out the rest of the complex. Let me address the first point. Mayor, as you're aware, the task force that you assigned worked very hard, and several members from the council worked on that. Past members of the council, Mr. Chapman, for example, also worked very hard. We put a lot of time into studying all of the different options that were available, and we did so that we could try to properly evaluate the different options that were out there. I thought we moved on from that question about the adequacy of the location. So I think, with all due respect, that point should be put by the wayside and not be considered any further. We've hashed that through. I think, secondly, with regard to any doubt about the organization to raise the additional money, let me say this. If you build a project and you build it on paper and you try to sell it to people and you haven't turned dirt, you're going to have a harder time getting that money. The second thing I'd like to say about that is, when Mr. Pitts made the comment, and he's much more well-versed in this than I am because he's traveled considerably for soccer, and when he says that other communities with successful soccer programs with complexes that are centralized, that are bringing in state, regional, national exhibitions, they don't put, those cities and communities don't put that on the backs of a small nonprofit organization. When you look behind me and look at the people that have supported soccer for literally for decades, and now I guess I'm old enough to be in that category, it's overwhelming what we have here in Rapid City. Let's not overlook this. Let's get back to the issue at hand. The issue at hand is, can we have a release of funds, additional funds for where we're headed? And I'm asking the council to release those funds, deny what's on the agenda tonight, and give the soccer organization those additional funds. We're at a point where we have to rely now on the professionals, Forefront and the others that are spearheading this. This is the next step they've suggested we go. That's what we're coming for. This organization will get this money. I believe in them, and I think our council does too. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. We also have a speaker request form from Kelly Thomas. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Please identify yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Kelly Thomas. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, distinguished members of the council. I grew up in a small town. We didn't have soccer. Came to Rapid City, played soccer for a couple of years. It's a wonderful sport. You learn lots from it. The respect for the players. It's just a great sport. I've got 3 little boys now. They're 10, 9, and 7. My wife and I, when we go to watch them play soccer, we never get to watch them together. One will take one to one field, one will take another one to another field, and we'll have a friend a lot of times take a third one to the third field in 3 different age groups. So a bigger complex will offer us the ability to stand and watch our children together and enjoy their accomplishments. You know, if they lose, the crying, the win, and the cheerfulness that goes along with that. The other issue I had with the old soccer complex is I tend to take call, and there's also, if there's a medical emergency or something along those lines, there's one way in and one way out. It can take up to half an hour to get out of the soccer complex that we currently have. If there is a medical condition or something along those lines, it's hard to get vehicles into that or out of there. So I just request that you open this up and deny this item number 60. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to item number 60? I have one other speaker request form, but it's not for item 60. Why don't you go ahead and come forward, identify yourself for the record. We just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak tonight. So,
hello, my name is Booker Beaumont. I live in Rapid City, South Dakota. 8 years ago, my wife filled out a volunteer form for Rapid City Youth Soccer, circled the box that had a number of different topics in there, from concessions, assistant coach, or just volunteer, and put a question mark in it. 6 days later, I got a phone call to come to a coach's meeting. I thought I was going to meet a coach. Lo and behold, I was the coach. Currently, I'm on the RCYSL board. I'm the executive vice president for South Dakota State Soccer. I'm in charge of the Olympic Development Program for South Dakota. And I coach 4 teams within Rapid City, 3 girls teams and 1 U14 boys team. Rapid City, along with the rest of the nation, is in a different economic time than we were 5 to 6 years ago. We all know that. If we want to add more money to our pot, we can't just trade it around the town. We have to be able to bring that money from outside, from Bismarck, from Billings, from Casper, from Cheyenne, from Sioux Falls, from Scotts Bluff. This afternoon, I was on an email group discussing the scheduling problems that we are having for the State Cup in Pierre. Did I mention that's in Pierre? The problem that we had was the ability to put fields in certain times and have everybody be able to play their games. I would have loved to be able to call and say, hey, we can do that in Rapid City. We need a complex. The amount of money that it would bring in to Rapid City, not only just for the people that come to the tournament, but then say, wow, I want to bring the rest of my family back to Mount Rushmore. I want to bring the rest of my families back to Keystone. I want to bring the rest of my family back for the stock show. This is an opportunity for us to grow as a community. Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else that has not had the opportunity to speak, go ahead and come on forward. There again, if you just identify yourself for the record, the floor is yours.
I would be glad to. Peggy Bussey and Mayor Hanks and council members, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I would like to let you know that I've been a soccer coach for 20 years. I've got grown children that have played. Right now, 2 of my girls are out in Seattle, and they have started their own team, and they play in the intramural adult divisions. So I'm kind of proud of that. But what I want you to realize is that as a soccer coach, I have taken my teams to Denver, to Blaine, to Steamboat, different areas, Sioux Falls, and they go in wide-eyed. They have a great time. What I would like to be able to do is offer that back to those teams, letting them come to Rapid City with those wide eyes and say, wow, what a great area. So please do consider how much you can make a difference for youth throughout the whole region, not just our Rapid City youth, but the whole region. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Anyone else wish to speak on item number 60? Anyone else? If not, very good. Thank you, everyone. I do have one additional speaker request form on item number 68. Michelle Hoffman. This is item number 68, everyone. Good evening, Michelle. If you'd please identify yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. My name is Michelle Hoffman, and I'm Vice President of the Rapid City Racers Swim Team. I just wanted to clarify a couple of matters concerning the placement of the 50-meter tank pool, previously discussed last week. First, I want it to be clearly understood by all parties involved that the Rapid City Racers fully advocate the placement of the leisure pool at the current Horseman site. I just want that to be clear. I understand there may have been some misunderstanding. So those children in that community deserve a leisure pool with the same amenities as those in Sioux Park or the Robbinsdale area Parkview pool. The second matter I wanted to clarify is what makes the best placement for a competitive pool. I understand that there have been some citizens that have contacted a council member and made the representation that the tank pool should be at Horseman because of the view, and that's why teams come to compete at our meets. That is not true. Swimmers do not go to attend swim meets for the view. Swimmers they attend meets based upon the quality of the facility. They attend meets where the pool is fast. That means, what are the gutter specifications? What are the depths of the pool? And those types of technical qualifications that would be determined later. The bottom line is this: if there's room, if it's economically feasible, if it's feasible from an engineering standpoint, by all means, place that 50-meter pool, tank pool at Horseman. However, I know the racers do not want to see there's approximately $2.2 million currently allocated for a tank pool. It does not serve competitive swimming to spend $1 million doing soil work, site preparation, when that same $1 million could go into building the best possible facility. So that gets into economic feasibility, engineering feasibility. Again, our position is that we simply want a quality competitive pool wherever you deem it best suited. But I just wanted to clear up that misunderstanding as well as what makes a good competitive pool. It's not the view. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it. I do not have any additional speaker request forms at this time, and we're dealing with items 54 through 68. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak to any issue 54 through 68? Now, the chair will look for a motion to close the public comment period on items 54 through 68 inclusive, please. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. We're on to ordinances. I'll turn to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock, who is our chair of our Legal and Finance. Item number 54, please.
54 is first reading of ordinance number 5612, repealing Chapter 15.48 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to mobile homes and mobile home parks and adopting a new revised Chapter 15.48 of the Rapid City Municipal Code as amended. And I move approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? This is first reading of ordinance number 5612, item number 54. Any further discussion? I'm sorry, let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the people that have put such hard work into this. I do have a few quick questions pertaining to this ordinance, and I suppose it would be better directed to our Growth Management Director, Marcia Elkins. And I'm just curious about the spacing requirements still, and I'm just wondering if people that own mobile homes and they want to build things like sheds or other buildings, with the 20-foot side clearance in between them, I'm just wondering how the ability to do that is affected.
Let's go to Marcia Elkins, Growth Management Director.
I guess I'm not aware of any specific problem that would need to be overcome. It's not an unusual requirement. The fire department has worked with the group to identify how we could reduce that when those buildings are fire sprinkled, to try to provide another option in some cases, and we have at least one developer who would like to use that option. If there's a specific question there, I'm not sure. I may be missing that.
Well, I guess I'm asking if somebody wants to build a shed on their own property and they own a mobile home, can they build a shed or use their property without installing the fire sprinkler protection, or are they pretty well prohibited from doing that?
Marcia?
Again, these standards apply to mobile home parks. They're not to an individual property owner's site. This would affect parks that have more than 2 mobile homes or manufactured homes located on them.
Thank you. Maybe I'm misunderstanding you, but if a mobile home is within a mobile home park, isn't it affected equally, or am I missing that point?
Marcia?
Yes, it would be in a mobile home park, not on an individual's own property, as you described it.
Oh, okay, thank you. The other issue that I guess I was also wondering, and this is a much broader question, but as I'm looking through a lot of the different requirements, such as skirting and everything else, I'm just wondering if this is equivalent to the same standards that we have on stick-built homes, and if they are roughly equivalent in the standards of inspection, skirting, and otherwise.
Marcia?
Mr. Broderick, I believe, is here in the audience from the fire department, and we did have some extensive discussions about this question because it was raised previously. he may want to address it, but there are similar kinds of requirements for siding in the International Residential Building Code for a typical stick-built house. There are different requirements, but there's similar requirements again for the issues of moisture that might wick up from the soils and some of the issues related to that. So Mr. Broderick might want to address that in more detail than I can.
Hi, Council. Rich Broderick, Fire Department. Question one, the sheds. I can answer that too. It has to do with the building permit. We don't require building permits on 120 square foot building or less. Most 10 by 20 sheds or 10 by 12 sheds fall into that. Average size of a shed is 8 by 10. We allow those. We have certain clearances that's 3 feet. If it's less than 3 feet, then it's got to be non-combustible. That's how the city ordinance reads now. That's how it'll be. The second thing, as far as the same thing as what we follow with the International Residential Code in the mobile home parks, is just what Marcia was just addressing. Was it's not only about non-combustible, but it also has to do with being weather resistant, ground contact. In a residential home, you couldn't have your siding come right down to direct contact on the ground. I believe the RC says you have to have 6 inches. That's some of the things. We have to come all the way down to the ground with the skirting, so it has to be weather resistant, not only non-combustible, but it has to do with all those things.
Thank you, Mr. Broderick. Part of the reason I just raised some of these concerns is I like the direction this is going, but I guess I do want to see that if we're going to make regulations on a mobile home, that we aren't making further regulations on just mobile homes as other home builders, that it's equivalent and it's across the board across this city. And I just want to make sure that we aren't segregating one group of people as opposed to another. And I just want to be equal in the way we apply our regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. So, Mr. Mayor, I would have a question for there that in reference to the sheds, and they can build a shed as long as it doesn't trigger a building permit?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other question I had is on the skirting. Is that going to require, as I read through that, it looks like it's going to require everyone in a mobile home who doesn't have that fireproof skirting to change it as exists right now?
No, it's not going to require. People that have existing skirting right now will not be required to change. If they change to update, then we would ask them to put in some kind of non-combustible, weather-resistant material. It's been working good about 3 years. This must be the 3rd year for this kind of mobile home inspection program where we really stepped it up a notch. Everybody's in compliance. We work with everybody. I go out there every year and work with all of the individual homeowners and so forth. I don't go on their property unless they ask me. It's really been an educational thing for everybody of the importance. It's not just about fire safety. It's really about safety in general. We're not going to require, there was some misinformation out there that we would require everybody to come into compliance, even the park homeowners. That's not what's going to happen.
I appreciate that, because as I read it, it wasn't real clear, and I'm hoping that maybe between now and second reading we can clarify that, just like we've clarified some of the other language in reference to access of the mobile homes and things like that. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, motion on the floor is for approval. This is first reading of ordinance number 5612. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 55, please.
55 is the first reading of ordinance number 5613, repealing section 17.5010 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to supplementary regulations applicable to mobile home parks and adopting a new revised section 17.50.110 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval of first reading of ordinance number 5613, item number 55. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 56, please.
56 is second reading of ordinance number 5701, amending Title 15, Chapter 15.24 of the Rapid City Municipal Code by adopting the 2009 Uniform Plumbing Code and adding amendments thereto. And I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion, second for approval. Marcia, my note here says to continue this to January 3rd. I'm sorry, Deb, we must not have got that to you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
That's a change that happened today. The city attorney's office has reviewed it and wants to make some additional changes, so they've asked to have it continued,
Okay.
and we would concur with that.
Okay, my apologies, Deb. We
I'll
didn't get
move
that to you.
to,
Okay, we have a motion and second to continue this to January 3rd, 2011. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 57, please.
57 is first reading of ordinance number 5705 regarding supplemental appropriation number 2 for 2011. I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. This is first reading of ordinance number 5705. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 58, please.
58 is request by Spurlick Consulting Incorporated for Dane Blusma for a preliminary plat located at 724 Lemon Avenue, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations. This is item number 58. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 59, please.
59 is request by Centerline for Lazy P6 Land Corporation Incorporated for preliminary plat located at east of 5th Street at the current eastern terminus of East Stumer Road, and I move approval.
Was that with stipulations, Deb?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations. This is item number 59. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 60, please.
Number 60, deny request by Soccer Group to release 2012 funds for well and construction documents at soccer complex, and I yield the floor.
Okay, could we have a motion, please? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Let me make sure everyone's clear. The motion was to deny the motion that's before us. Is that correct? Or did you want to approve the motion to deny?
I want to approve the motion.
Okay. I just want to make sure we have the motion. I don't want a double negative here. The motion on the floor is to approve the item as listed on the agenda, which is to deny the request by soccer. Is that all right with the seconder? Who made the second? Okay, very good. I just want to make sure everyone, I'm going to go to Alderman Aaron Costello, who I believe is going to abstain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's correct. I'll be abstaining as my employer is heavily involved in this project.
Very good. Thank you so much. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to basically state where I'm coming from this evening. A little over 5 years ago, I was in the audience when soccer made its presentation to 2012 for funds out of the 2012 funding. And I sat there, and my initial thought was, this is a terrific project. It was a terrific presentation, and it's be tremendous for this soccer community, be tremendous for the city of Rapid City. And I still feel that way. And when the city council made a subcommittee to review all the projects that were presented the last go around 2012, I was on that subcommittee. And one of the first things we had to do was to interview the projects that were approved and make sure that everything was in order, and then bring that recommendation forward to the city council for the final approval of that plan. And we met with the soccer people, and one of the first comments we made during that meeting was, this is basically, we're funding a 30-year project. And their comment was, actually, then the question was, by doing so, can you make this happen? And their answer was, yes, we can make this project happen with you funding 1/3 of the project. So we later on then talked about fundraising and how soccer was going to do some fundraising to do their share of the complete project. And we moved that forward, and the city council approved spending $3.8 million for soccer. And of course, we all know that the issue then centered around the land. And for the last 5 years, we've been meeting with soccer at least once a year. And we have discussed the land, and every time we have discussed, where are you adding in your funding? And every year, we got told that we're working on it. We're having a tough time raising dollars because, first of all, it was we have really, people need to know where the project's going to be. I can understand that, and I understand that yet today. But I can tell you that there is projects out there, not only in this community, but in other communities that have capital fundraising, and they don't have a complete set of plans, and they don't have money when they start, but they do fundraise. So let's fast forward a little bit farther. Is, like I said, over the years, two questions have always been asked, and that had to do with the land and where are you at on your funding. Well, at the Legal and Finance Committee meeting last Wednesday, we were told that you basically raised $25,000 in the last 5 years in cash, and I think you had $200,000 that someone would do an in-kind donation further on down the project. Well, that raised a concern for me because over the last 5 years, every time we've met, we've talked about fundraising and where were you at. And $25,000 isn't a lot when you have basically a $10 million project that was presented to the city during the third go-around of 2012. And 5 years later, $25,000 is not a lot. But that leads to some other concerns I have is basically we have spent as a city $120,000 to date, and that was for some design work. And Wednesday and tonight you're asking for an additional $740,000 to move forward on your project. My concern is twofold. Is we're being asked to fund drilling a well out there, and then I believe the rest of it's for engineering costs. And during the presentation last Wednesday, you know, there was discussion as I have a projected cost for the project here that I was given. And when I look at this, it gives me some grave concerns. I mean, last Wednesday, your group talked about adding alternatives to the project after it was bid because you were sure that the dollar amount was probably going to be lower and you'd be able to do alternatives, you can get more accomplished. Well, my concern is this, is what if this project, when we bid it out, comes in at these estimated costs or higher? The city, at that point in time, will already have spent just about $1 million for this project, and there wouldn't be enough money to fund the first phase of this project. What do we do then? Soccer has raised no money. The only other alternative the city has is to say, geez, I guess we're going to have to put some more money into this project to get the first phase done, or we walk away and leave $1 million laying on the table. That raises some huge concerns for me. And then Thursday, when I read the paper, I read in there that soccer is going to start fundraising in earnest next spring. Geez, I thought that was taking place for the last 5 years. That blew me away. So I have some grave concerns. I'm for the soccer project wholeheartedly. But as a steward of the money for the city of Rapid City, I have some real question mark out there is what happens if this project comes in as projected or higher. Where do we go then? Those are grave concerns, and I think all you should have those too. Your project's fantastic. It'd be awesome for this community and for all the people that are in soccer. Never argue with that point. But I have some grave concerns. I want this to move forward, but I wish 5 years ago when you guys said, no problem, we can make this happen, and that was fundraising on your part, that you would have done that. At least raise some funds. So if this project come in higher than what is projected, there'd be some dollars there for you guys to put into this project. So I'll listen to further conversation, but I have some grave concerns, even though I support this 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Those go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that I'll mention some of the same and maybe reiterate some of the same, but I appreciate the passion that's involved in soccer. I think anybody who knows me has seen me in the community. I'm actively involved in youth sports. And I had a daughter who played soccer. Both my daughters played soccer, and one of them played for St. Thomas, and they won the title a few years ago, her last year in soccer. I'm being consistent in my point, and I'm not going to reiterate everything Mr. Kroger has said, but I've been privy to almost every conversation that's taken place in soccer, and I'm not sure that everybody has the same information I do. You have my cell phone number, my email, you can call me. And that is a particular problem that I've had from the start, is that every time we've talked about the fundraising issue, it's been like putting a ball under 3 shells, and then you lift up the shells, it's not there. And that's an important factor when you come to the support of a project and you are sold on the understanding of particulars in the project. Now I'd like to address the particular situation of where this property is located that is far north of our city. The infrastructure is non-existent in this particular location. And I sat in on the meetings when this particular location was chosen. And we went through and we compared 2 or 3 different locations, and we basically gave each, we had a list of criteria, and we gave each of those criteria a number. And then when we added them up, Wally Byam clearly won for the Pacific Choice location to be chosen. When you add the cost of the infrastructure, all those types of items, and then we voted, and the vote was to take this site, which I've been clearly against from the very beginning to the very end. There's been mention about the traffic studies and those types of things, or whatever have you. If it wouldn't concern me so much, but if you go back to shortly after this site was chosen, there was a multi-million-dollar tax district posed for this site. Multi-million, 20, I think the ending number was in the 20s of millions, to get this site, to get road, water, sewer, infrastructure into this site. The TIF was turned down, I think, at the onset of it. So when we talk about this being the most appropriate site, I think it's important that everybody knows what we're looking at. Like I said, I'm not going to reiterate the fundraising much, but I do want to touch on that a little bit. And the fact is that it's been a slightly moving target for us. We've been told that the fundraising would take place when the land was identified. That happened. The fundraising has been non-evident. One of the things that makes youth sports in our city successful, and soccer in particularly, is what it costs to play. It's relatively inexpensive to play, and as you increase those fees or what have you to create another 12 fields, which doesn't really get you any more fields than what you already have to play on. I think there's about 22 fields currently in the city. Some of them are scattered throughout the city, but it's not like it doesn't exist. So to hurry up and invest almost $1 million into a well and site plans for me in a site that I don't think is going to be appropriate and is going to need millions of dollars to ever meet the needs of the city, which is outside the city at this current time, is interesting to me. So it's not that we don't support the soccer vision, and I think I've been pretty clear on that. I think that at some point it might work out had it been a location that makes sense to most people, and the project could be finished as proposed originally. The project has changed over the last 5 years. That does happen to any project. You'll see that that does take place. There's been mention about the soccer complex as it is right now over on St. Patrick Street, one way in, one way out. That's a simple fix. It's, I think, that area of $300,000 to fix, to get another exit out of that location. I have grave concerns about this project moving forward on that location. I'm not going to. I've been consistent in my stance on this. I'm not going to support it. I think that there's a lot of issues that evolve around that particular location, and I'm not here to set anybody up for a position that they get X amount of fields up there and they have no way to get their roads, and there's no water, no sewer. Those things will have to be addressed, and the taxpayers are going to pay for it. There's no doubt about that. So I'll yield to the floor and hear what my colleagues have to say.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Thank you. I guess I don't believe the same. I think soccer is an opportunity for Rapid City. I think we have the land, which is a big part of this project. Fundraising, I think we have a few projects that went forth and were supposed to fundraise, and we still let the money go. We've had projects where we said they were going to fundraise the first time. We finished it. They came back, asked for more, and we gave it to them. That was softball. I guess I see this project moving forward, and in the long run, if the city ends up putting more money into this project, it's a good project. If they start this project, I believe once the ground is broken and they're ready to go, and they show people that this is not a dream anymore, this is reality, there's a big difference. It's easier to get money once people can see, feel, and touch something and move forward. So to shut this project down with the land ready to go, the design, $120,000 being spent on it, and needing to put $740,000 into infrastructure, I think this is a good project. Like I said, for fundraising, if we're worried about fundraising, then we ought to look at the other projects that we have funded over the years that said they were going to. Theater was supposed to raise the same amount. We are moving forward on theater, same amount of money. Once they got a project moving, it's come full force. How about 6th and St. Joe? We've let that project continue. They were supposed to have their money and be done by December 6th. We let that project move forward. I don't see this as any different. People are calling this something different. I don't think it is. I think this is a positive for Rapid City. I think it should move forward. And I think it's a great opportunity for our kids and our community. And I have to disagree with my colleagues. So I make a substitute motion to release that $740,000.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. Let's go to Alderman Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everybody that's here supporting this. It's great to see everyone out pushing for it. Keep it up. This project isn't over by any means. This is something that most everybody at this dais has supported from the very beginning. I know I have. I was on the CVB board at the time that this project was initially proposed as a 2012. Mr. Usera, I know that you did tons of presentations to the point where you were hardly hoarse. In fact, you're so hoarse you can't even present anymore. You didn't even talk tonight, did you? You made hundreds of presentations to that effect, I'm sure, and did an excellent job selling this program to the whole city. It is a great project. It is a project that will have an economic impact on Rapid City. Soccer brings loads of people to town, and they spend money. They stay in the hotels. They eat food. They go to the tourist attractions. It is a great program all the way through, and I've supported it from day one. I support a central complex. I think that it makes sense that we have one that is all of the things that you parents have talked about tonight. It's safer, it's more convenient. You're able to attend several of your children's events almost simultaneously. I remember those days of trying to be in two places at once on a couple different fields. It's tough to do when you're spread out all over town. I understand that. I truly, truly support the direction you're going, but I don't support this project. I can't support this location. I'm sorry. I'd love to. I want to, but I can't. There's just things about this project that I just cannot put my arms around. I would love to see all these fields in one place. But to put $1 million on the table today for this area of land outside the city limits that we may or may not ever see the fundraising, am I incorrect in that? Is it in the limits? All right, I apologize. We may or may not see the fundraising accomplish all of what we want it to accomplish. I echo the same concerns that Alderman Kroger has had, that I thought the capital campaign was already in motion, and when I saw it in the paper that it's going to start sometime in the future, that was a little bit concerning. But more than anything, I guess I really see this as a project that if we fund it tonight, it's simply a down payment. We're simply committing future funds, because you will be back. You'll have to be back. This is a huge project, and it's probably bigger than what the group that at least the group, the way it's functioned for the last 5 years, is capable of raising the number of dollars that you're proposing. And I can't do that. And I'm sorry to say that, but I'm going to have to vote in favor of the denial. But I hope that I see you in the future. I hope that I see you back here with a project that we can put our arms around and that we can support, because it is something that we need to do. Thank you.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you. Had to make the light come on. I think I would offer a substitute motion to give the soccer group, because I believe there was an email sent out that there was going to be some reorganization. And I'm wondering if we could make a substitute motion to give them, I don't know, like another 9 months or a year to see if they can come up with the money. Can I continue to speak, or do I have to get a?
Just a point of clarification. Whether or not the motion passes that is currently on the agenda, that does not eliminate the money. I think that's very important to point out to the folks in the audience and also to the media. Even if the motion on the floor to deny releasing the funds passes, the money for the soccer is part of the current 2012 resolutions. It does not go away. So I don't know if there's really a need to extend anything as far as worrying about the money, whether or not it's the only thing that's on the table tonight is to actually release the funds. We're not talking about, there's no motion on the floor to actually take the funds away. I hope that helps.
Okay. Well, then I'll just talk. Went back and read the original proposal and minutes from 2005 and 2009, and it seems like even in those minutes, they're still kicking around the same subject that we're talking about tonight, whether or not there's to be, significant funds brought forward, if you were supposed to do your own fundraising. There was different opinions, but it seemed like no conclusion was ever made in both those minutes, which is real unfortunate. It's like Mr. Alderman Kroger and Davis, and really everyone that has spoken, I'm in full support of this project. It's just we're looking at the money, about if there's enough support in the community, and obviously, and I applaud all of your work that you've done with your students and children, and I too have been running all around town when two of my children were in at different fields at the same time, and so I know what that's like, and it's not a great feeling. I guess I would, I don't know, I'll hear what other people have to say, but, it's a hard decision because of the fact that it is such a good cause. But I do think it's reasonable, and it's concerning that after all this time that there's not more money matching, because it's supposed to be a $10 to $12 million project. And even though it still doesn't negate the fact that it's a worthy project. So, thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a really tough decision, and especially for me personally. I grew up playing soccer here. I've gone up through U10 and up, carried the game actually from playing here in Rapid City. Still played soccer while I was in the Navy and carried my love of the game to 2 different continents, playing it on the European continent in the Netherlands against some Germans that unbelievable players, and also some of the Brits playing in Plymouth in their port. I've had a chance to play with people down in South America and Panama, and I have a real love of the game for soccer. But at the same time, we do have to be good stewards of the money. We are presented with that task. And I also share the concerns that Alderman Kroger and Alderman Davis have raised, which is why I personally feel conflicted about this decision, because my love of the game for soccer is something that I cherish. Unfortunately, I do have to reiterate that there are some concerns here about the ability to fundraise this money. And I have to take that into consideration and take myself and my love out of the equation, because I'm tasked with the responsibility of being a steward of the funds of this community. And that is a much greater obligation than my own personal taste. So tonight I have to put myself as the steward of this community's funds, and I have to put myself and my personal ideas aside to look at what's best for this community. And I unfortunately also follow the logic and the reasoning of why Alderman Kroger and Davis also have their concerns, so I will likely be voting with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Procedurally, let me ask a question. Does anyone wish to speak that has not had the opportunity to speak yet before Alderwoman Deb Hadcock speaks for a second time? So turn your light. I say let's go to Alderman Bill Waugh.
Thank you, Mayor. I, too, have the same concerns that I've heard going up and down the dais. I, too, had 3 children go through the soccer program here in Rapid City. And I think the message that Rapid City Soccer is hearing tonight, that this council believes in the project, and the money is there for your use, but we want to see what you can do for fundraising. And I think once we see that you have money coming in for fundraising, we'll be more than willing to start releasing those funds that have been set aside for this soccer complex. So based on the information I have and what I've heard and what I've seen, I cannot support releasing those funds tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
So the direction basically from this council I'm hearing is they need more fundraising before we let go of the funds. And I guess right now I'm not getting the location and why we would change that location based on what I've heard and have been around listening. They did have a task force with Malcolm Chapman, and I do remember that picked this site, and that's why it came forward. So I wouldn't be in favor of switching the site at this point. But I understand the fundraising, but I still am not in support of just shutting this down and not moving it forward. So I'll be voting no on this to move forward. I think they can do it with some type of groundbreaking, and that would put up like 12 fields. And I think, I'll say it again, once you see the progress moving forward, people are more willing to start getting that money, and they're able to get it a lot quicker. When people can see, feel, and hear, or just kind of see what's happening and know that that's moving forward. When the dirt is moved, you'll see the fundraising move a lot quicker. So again, we're shutting down a project because of fundraising, but I have to say again, there's many projects on here that said they were going to match funds and have not, and we still move forward. In fact, we let them just spend the 3.7 on one of the projects, and they have done no fundraising. So I don't see that this project's any different than other projects that we have done. And again, I'll keep reiterating this. Why is this project different than any other?
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple points of clarity I want to make. One was brought up about the softball fields tonight and the quest for ASA softball to get fields. When the girls program came forward with their original proposals for 2012 funding, they had no fields, they had nowhere to play. They were playing on boys' baseball fields, and they've expanded their program. They've kept it affordable. It's expanded, and now they're moving into 2 more fields, and so that's important to note. It wasn't that they had another alternative. They really basically had nowhere to play except for on boys' baseball fields, and I think at that time they were, I think, in the low hundreds, maybe a couple hundred, 200, 300 girls. Now they're at 700, and they're going to expand to like 1,000. There's been mention of the site, and I think someone had mentioned earlier talking about, or will be later tonight, talking about Horseman Pool and what weighs into the factor of when you make a decision. When you're sitting up here in the dais and you got to spend your money, because that's what we're going to do, is we're going to spend your money. And I'm hoping to believe that I take into considerations everything involved. If we can build a better complex and spend less money preparing the site, just as talking about the swimming pool, if you're talking about the ground that needs to be repaired, the infrastructure in the area that needs to be fixed to make it even appropriate for people to even get there, I think you got to consider, if you're going to put $800,000 into a well, how far can that go if you don't need the well? If you've already got water, you've already got sewer, or you've got a site to put it. I mean, I think you got to consider that. So I think that's important when we talk about the site locations and those types of things. So I want to make sure that point is clear. And I did sit on that site selection committee, and there's other people in this room that sat on that site selection committee too and witnessed the same thing I did. As the sites were weighed out to the price and all the factors that were taken into account, one site was better than the others, and that site was not the site that was chosen. So I sit here with that information, trying to make it the best case decision that I could make. And I've been consistent in that stance. Thank you.
Further discussion. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you. I was seeking some clarification because I know the request is for $740,000, but that's still not going to give us 12 fields. And I was wondering how much more money will give us 12 fields, because I understand that's just to dig the well and construction documents.
Who would like to answer that? And do you understand the question?
First of all, Luis Chisara is my name. Mayor, City Council, thank you very much for giving me this chance. Could you clarify the question for me, please?
Tonight, we're looking at, or the first request was to release $740,000, and that's supposed to go to dig the well and construction documents. And so after given that much, it's still not going to have 12 soccer fields. So how much more do you need to give to get 12 soccer fields with the parking?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Okay, how much more money would be needed? Well, to complete the entire phase of that first phase with the 12 soccer fields, the underground lighting, or the wiring, the irrigation, it would be $3.6 million total. We talk about no fundraising, yet no one's mentioned the in-kind donations and things that have happened. You've only given us...
I'm going to give you just a little bit of latitude, but typically at this point, since we're actually past the public discussion, we typically don't allow anything other than a response, but please go ahead and finish your thought.
I just wanted to clarify that, we've had $1.3 million in donations up to this date with services from different organizations and stuff, and donations that haven't been brought up or even brought to the table. So I just wanted to, there's some misinformation there on that amount. So.
Thank you. Bonnie?
Mayor, could I ask him a little bit more about the donations that haven't been discussed?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about these donations that you say?
Sure. As we go into the whole process of looking at things, when we got the land, when the land was allocated and the task force selected the land, people started coming on board. We have a donation of $154,000 for the trees, to put the trees in. Forefront Design has come on board, and they've given us a $40,000 in-kind donation for their services. WIS Architecture and Associates have given us a $60,000 donation in-kind services as they go through. We're currently working on the porous cement to make it a more green atmosphere or green complex. That's $200,000 of a donation right there. And then if you include the land, I mean the value of the land, let's just say that's an $800,000 donation right there. I think you're seeing that we're already starting on this process of having the donations. Really, quite honestly, the construction documents allow us to do one thing. It allows us to take it to the construction companies and bid it, and then they can give us intelligent estimates on how much they can give us back in in-kind donations. I'm taking my latitude, aren't I?
Just a little. That's all right. Okay.
I'm a teacher. I take the minutes I can get.
That's all right. Bonnie, anything else?
Okay, thank you. No, this is, it's like, do you spend another million to, with it? So it's a tough one, and I agree with Ms. Hadcock that I know that other groups don't have to show the money all the time. But I also have the concern that for being stewards of our money is that so I do have, I still haven't decided exactly how I'm going to vote, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? The motion on the floor is for approval of the item as listed on the agenda, and that is to deny the request for the soccer group for the release of 2012 funds for the well and construction documents at this time. Further discussion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Is Jerry Cole here tonight?
I believe he is. Yep, he's in the back. We'll get him. There's Mr. Cole. Did you have a question for him?
I do.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Jerry, I think it was in 2008, the city council, or the city accepted this property, and I believe it has a 5-year reversion clause. Is that correct? Right.
I do believe that's correct, but
Okay.
the city attorney would know
I
more
was
than
going
that.
to say, Alderman Quaker, Jason Green, our city attorney, actually read that to me today, if you'd like to ask him that question. Jason?
Yes, the date that the property must be developed and used for recreational purposes is June 1 of 2013.
So here's my question, and is if we would fund now just the cost of building the well, which arguably would have other purposes as well, if it's used for a future recreational use, would that then not give, would that give time for soccer to do additional fundraising? So I guess my question to you is, Jerry, have you thought about what the city could do with this property recreationally if it's not used for soccer?
Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mayor. I really haven't. We've bantered around a few ideas, but, like a dog park and those type of things, but we really haven't sit down and looked at it and say, what could we do out there to make it into a recreational property if the soccer fields weren't on there?
The Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor, sir.
And so I guess where I was going with this, I was floating the idea of of funding a well. But it doesn't make sense to do that if there's no Plan B in terms of a recreational use. But if we did just a well, then we can make the very real case to the taxpayers that we're not wasting money if we're going to build a well that could be used for a good Plan B if the plan is to try to keep the property and use it for recreational use. Just floating that idea as something to consider. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jerry. Motion on the floor is for approval as per advertised in the agenda. Any further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Let's take a real quick roll call. I think I know what it is, but let's just get it on the record.
Wah. Mason. Peterson. Wyffenbach. Davis. Adcock. Kroger. Costello. Abstain.
He's abstaining.
Quaker.
Aye.
1, 2,
6 to 2, motion passes. I guess I have sort of an unusual request of the media, and that is please don't have a headline in tomorrow's paper that says that the money was taken away, because that is the farthest thing from the truth. This project is alive. The money is still identified for soccer, and it's unfortunate if the headlines are somehow mislead the public in the fact that this council, and I don't want to speak for the council, but I will give you my impression of what these council members told you was the fact that there was strong support for the project, but at this point there were just some concerns. The money is still there for you. So thank you, everyone. We're on to item number 61. Alderwoman Hadcock, could you please read that in, please?
61 is a request from Pennington County for transfer of property, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on the motion. Let's go to Jason Green. We have a revised.
Yes, it's on the dais in hard copy for each member of the council. This MOU, in essence, is an agreement to agree, but it authorizes the transfer of the property upon approval of this agreement by Pennington County and their signature on the agreement filing with the city finance office. The real gist of the problem here is that in order to enter into a lease purchase agreement with the county for the evidence building and the parking ramp, we need to have a lot more information than we can put together in the very short time period that we've been discussing this. So we're anticipating that this will be something that can be finalized by April 1 of 2011. If it's not finalized by that date, the deadline can be extended by mutual agreement. If we're unable to reach agreement, the county agrees to transfer the property back to the city. The county also has agreed that we're going to work towards some terms in the lease purchase agreement that provide for a return to the city of an ownership interest in the property once the bonds are paid off. The county is going to undertake some design work once this is approved, so they're going to incur some costs, but that's going to be necessary for us to identify exactly what is going to be constructed, how much will be the city's responsibility, and all of those details. One of the other ones that obviously the council will have to wrestle with is the funding source to pay for the improvements. But that's something that can be worked out at a later date.
Before, I just want to make sure the motion maker, that was part of your motion, was the approval of the revised agreement on the dais. Is that correct? Okay. That's right with the seconder. Okay, very good. I just want to make sure that, Jason, do you have anything else to add?
I have one other thing I want to point out specifically. This agreement contains language that says by approving this agreement, the council is authorizing the mayor and the finance officer to sign the quitclaim deeds, but not to deliver them until the necessary approvals are received from Pennington County.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Second paragraph down says is that 39% of the cost will be borne by the county and 61% by the city. And we don't have a funding source, so if we entered into this, are we binding the city and future councils into funding this project and finding the funds.
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Thank you. I think that what that language refers to is the current split for the
Evidence.
areas of the evidence building that we currently share. I think that those items will be the subject of negotiation through the lease purchase, but at this point, I would anticipate a similar type of arrangement. As to whether you're binding the future council, any lease purchase agreement that would be presented would have to be approved by the council. At that point is when you would be binding a future council.
Would we be, here's the bottom line, is in 2 weeks, we have 4 new county commissioners and a new sheriff taking office. So on a percentage-wide basis, they're going to see a bigger change in their government than we saw in ours this year. And I just wonder if we're making the right decision by doing this all tonight, when we have a new commission and a new sheriff taking office in 2 weeks. And I also wonder if we should be more vague as to the percentages and allow that to be discussed when the new commissioners and new sheriff take office. I've seen draft plans. I'm not sure if the rest of you have seen draft plans, but the set of plans I saw showed a skywalk going across 2nd Street, and these plans could really get expensive. And so when we say 61% by the city, we could be talking a lot of dollars. And I think this council should know more. I would note that there isn't a link. We just got this tonight. I really think that it makes sense to continue this until January to allow the new council and new sheriff the new commission and new sheriff to look at this. And if there's other information I'm not aware of, if someone would share that with us tonight. But I'm not sure I understand the urgency of passing this tonight and committing us to what could be millions of dollars, and we do not have a funding source identified. Thank you.
Just a real quick question. Jason, in the agreement, is the 61% strictly for the evidence portion of the project?
Yes, I believe that's a reflection of what's contained in the current agreement on the evidence building. We've identified already that there needs to be some updating with regard to the parking ramp, because only about 10% of that will be the city's. So those are numbers that will be worked out. I would point out that the 39-61 split that's been identified is a part of the preamble language. So it's not binding at this point. There will be further negotiation and discussion, I would imagine, not just between the county's attorney and myself, but also among the policymakers.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion. Motion on the floor is for approval. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I appreciate that information, Jason, because that, brings that forward with, there can be negotiations. I'm pretty sure that the commissioner, that is the sheriff who brought this forward to us, is probably on board. And I did talk to one other person that is moving forward to be a commissioner, and he also called me and wanted us to look at this and move it forward. So there's 2 of the commissioners that are new that are forward, wanting this to move forward. So I would appreciate the council if we move this forward, and I think some of the questions of Alderman Quaker on the funding and how that's working will be coming forward as well later. So I don't think later on this contract is a bad thing. Again, there can be negotiations on this, and it's something positive for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Further discussion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, I have a question for Mr. Green.
Go ahead, please.
Mr. Green, is are we on item 61, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Item 61.
This says request from Pennington County for transfer of property.
Yes.
But are we committing to anything beyond that, or I guess
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
At this point, the council is committing and authorizing the transfer of the property that we own around the courthouse complex that the county needs to move forward with the project. The county is committing to negotiate the lease purchase agreement with the city and recognizes that lease purchase agreement needs to be in place before this is truly final. If we're unable to come to an agreement on that, the county would return the property to the city at that point.
Okay, that's the part. That's the part, and that's in the language here that we don't. Because that's a particular item that we haven't really visited. So about what I mean, I've had some conversations with the new sheriff, and he thinks that this, I shouldn't speak for him, but in our conversation, my understanding was that he felt that we could accomplish this evidence building at a lesser price than what was put forth. So if we can change that, Mr. Mayor, I guess I would phrase it in a question, Mr. Green, by if we approve this, because I understand they need this land transfer to move forward with their bonding. So don't really want to hold them up, but I want to make sure that we have enough ability to negotiate how far we're going to go with the purchase of a new evidence building. Does that make sense, Mr. Mayor?
Yep. Let's go to Mr. Green, City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that there's going to be significant ability on the part of the council to negotiate the agreement, including design elements that the council may want or not want. And with regard to the initial question, Mr. Weifenbach, paragraph 5 very clearly says that if we're unable to reach a lease purchase agreement, the county shall deed back to the city the real property the city has agreed to transfer to the property, or to the county, excuse me. So that protection is written into the agreement.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. And also, just to clarify, just to reiterate, but the percentages, as mentioned in the first part of this, we aren't committing to that. It's only the property, correct?
Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Yes, the percentages are a reflection of what the arrangement currently is. It's there to set out what the history is. It's not a commitment that will be the final percentage that's in the agreement. It will depend on, obviously, what is the relative usage of the two parties.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Item number 62, Deb, if you would, please.
62 is confirm appointment of Nick Davis to complete the unexpired term of Vincent Del Morte Jr. and reappointment of Dwayne Baumgartner, Steve Doshier, Jacqueline Allen, and Melanie Jeppesen to the Beautification Committee, and I move approval.
We have a motion, second for approval. Discussion on the motion. Let's go to Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be abstaining from this because Nick is my son, and I ask a little latitude here. Nick is a product of my marriage to Joni, who I am celebrating 35 years of marriage today. So congratulations, Joni, and thank you for allowing me to spend it with my friends here on the dais tonight.
Jeez. Okay, very good. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, whoops, I'm sorry. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I want to clarify, is this for the beautification?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering if I could ask Alderman Davis about Nick's, how he maintained his bedroom in high school. Just kidding. Thanks.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes with Alderman Davis abstaining, if the record would so reflect. We're on to the Public Works Committee items, and Alderman Sam Quaker, could you please read in item number 63, please?
Item number 63 is presentation on code enforcement structure, and I yield to the floor.
Could we have a motion to acknowledge or could we have a motion, please? Someone? Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to acknowledge. Discussion on that motion. Now we can have some discussion here. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a small clarification on something that I've heard recently that I think there was a misunderstanding on this presentation, that a question came up on whether or not there was a misunderstanding that this was a discussion about whether or not the council wanted to become more aggressive on code enforcement. And I think there's some sort of misunderstanding. Starting in 2003, we already, as a council, passed a resolution, Resolution 2009-116, lifting the restrictions on a proactive code enforcement. This discussion has to pertain to restructuring and moving code enforcement under the police department, as far as I understand from the presentation by Dale Schumacher. And I just wanted to make that clarification because there's unfortunately been some sort of misunderstanding that this was about how we were going to pursue code enforcement, but this is truly a discussion about restructuring code enforcement under the police department. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Mr. Schumacher for his passion in keeping the city's ordinances up and keeping the city clean, because not all the time does everybody want to abide by these. And myself and Alderman Mason had some conversation with Mr. Schumacher, and we've also been in conversation with our community resources director, who decided he wanted to be the new sheriff in town. So in the interim, we had kind of got a little bit, I guess, off track there, and I'm hoping that as we move forward with our new community resources person, that we'll be able to re-engage in those activities and look at some opportunities that looking at this actually entails some of these items, and there's mention of, you know, how some of our current enforcement pits one neighbor against another neighbor, and how we may get around some of those items to make it easier for people to address those issues. And there is Sioux Falls is very proactive and educational in their community enforcement, and that's kind of what we were looking at when Mr. Tome decided to run for sheriff, and that kind of set aside our communications. But we'll be back on track, I'm assuming, after the first of the year. So, and that's probably information that we haven't even shared with Mr. Barbier, because he's been kind of in change from position to position too. So I'd just like to share that, and I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock. You're next.
Thank you, Mr. Weifenbach, for those words. On this, it says that basically on this presentation on the structure, code enforcement structure, it shows that he wants to take it into the police department. The proposal that we move code enforcement division under the authority and direction of the Rapid City Police Department would be one. Second would be the proposal that we create a working supervisor position within the code enforcement division under authority and direction of the police department. I know also Mr. Schumacher had talked to me about this, and it sounded like he had support of doing this. But I don't know if we have to send it back to a committee that they already had to move this forward, because their recommendations back then weren't to do this part of it. So is it easier for us maybe to put it back in committee, Mr. Hanks, the committee that they had before, and see if they have a different direction now that Mr. Schumacher has brought this forward with a little more detail to it?
If I can, I'm going to answer that with sort of another question. And that would be, is the council comfortable with allowing Barb Garcia, who now has code enforcement underneath her, to have an opportunity to meet and speak with not only Mr. Schumacher, but also some of the neighborhood watch organizations to see exactly how we can move forward with it? I think.
So you're asking just to have the council give her some time to meet and then come back with some recommendations?
Yes.
I appreciate that, because I think it's something that needs to be talked about, and I think Barb Garcia can work with Dale Schumacher pretty easy to figure out what's next. So I'm in favor of that. I just wanted to make sure we had that conversation going, and that Dale is getting his questions and answers that he needed to move this forward as well. So thank you, Dale, for all your work, and I know Barb's great to work with, so I'm sure they'll find some solution in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to offer a substitute motion to continue this back to Public Works to allow for a presentation from Code Enforcement Management on the current priorities and goals of code enforcement.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do you have a date specific? I'm not sure that they're going to be able to get something with the holidays. Can you put it out?
The first one in January is be fine with me.
Okay. Yep.
That okay?
Okay, very good. Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Let's go to, I'm going to go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach, seems to be.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. I appreciate the spirit of that motion, but I have some concern that because of Mr. Barbier's flux of filling in for Pauline, that we may there may be a time constraint issue there. If he's filling in as the accounting person, I'm not sure when Pauline's coming back, and I didn't mean to bump you out, Mr. Mason, but I wanted to make sure that we didn't put a time frame on on our people that was inappropriate. So, Mr. Mayor, I guess that would be the question to Mr. Barbier.
Okay, go ahead and ask your question.
My question is, what would he feel comfortable with to give us enough time to really give this justice? Because there is a lot of issues that are pointed here, and he is in the middle of transitioning from one job and still filling in that other job and moving to the other job. So,
Yep. Mr. Barbier, is there a recommended?
Yeah, I would
recommendation?
appreciate the opportunity if we could continue this to the first Public Works meeting in February, if that would be fair. That would give Barb Garcia and myself some time.
I think Alderman Quaker said, I just misheard him.
Oh, okay.
It really was February. Okay, further discussion. The motion on the floor is to continue this to the first Public Works meeting in February. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll keep this short. I just want to make two comments. The first comment is I look forward to Ms. Garcia being a part of this. I have told Mr. Schumacher time and time again, Ms. Garcia has got to be one of the hardest working women in this city, and I have an extreme amount of admiration for her. I have seen her do things, and quite frankly, multiple things all at once on multiple different projects that, frankly, is unreal. So I look forward to Ms. Garcia's input on this, and I'm sure with her help, we will proceed forward in a very timely manner. Thank you.
Barb, the bar keeps getting higher for you. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you, and I want to thank Dale for continuing his efforts on this topic. I had spoken with the mayor and the previous community director, is that?
Resource director, Kevin
Resource
Thome, yeah.
director. And seems like there might be a weakness in accountability of when items that are in the police department domain are referred to the police department. And then I guess I'd like to see some kind of tracking record so that when things go from community enforcement to the police, that there's some kind of, and I'm not saying there's not already, I just don't know. Because then there's no way of knowing if things were looked into, if the ball was dropped, because I know a car parking in the wrong place isn't going to be the highest priority for the police in a day. And so I would just like to make sure that there's some kind of system in place where there's some kind of accountability about this, because first I would just want to go on record as saying I'm really not in favor of code enforcement being under in the police department domain. I think we should limit that as much as possible. And so anyway, I don't know, Police Chief, if you want to, or Mayor, if Police Chief can talk about that as far as if there's how you're currently handling, reports of cars parked and sidewalks with a flat tire.
Chief, the question is basically, what's the procedure dealing with a reference or a referral coming from code enforcement as far as something typically in the public right-of-way, whether it's parking the wrong way, parking and blocking the sidewalk? What's the process?
Thank you, Mayor. To my understanding, all of these code enforcement issues are being handled within a specific sector with an officer assigned to solve these problems. So there's been a fairly close working relationship between the police officer in those areas and the code enforcement officer. I've never heard of there being some issue with lack of follow-up or tracking or anything of that nature. So I think it's going smooth from our end.
Say, Bonnie, if I may.
Oh.
If we could ask Barb, the code enforcement folks did within the last year or two actually implement a software tracking program that I know that they, I believe, can give a report when they come back in February. Is that correct, Barb? Okay.
Okay, and I just also, Chief, I wasn't saying that there was a problem. It's probably more of my lack of knowledge of the system, and I was just mostly expressing a concern that there could be a gap between, what's turned over to the police department and what gets back. So I'm glad to hear there's a tracking system. And I guess I'll continue talking more about this in February. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is to acknowledge dealing with item number 63. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Mr. Barbier, the bids, please. Can you spin that for us?
Yep. So,
Thank you.
okay. Item number 64 is an ADA compliance project bid, and that is in our downtown Rapid City area. The engineer's estimate on the project was $74,500. The staff's recommendation is for a bid of the base bid and alternate number 2 of $44,501.30 towards Brewer Construction.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to award the base bid plus alternate 2, and that is for $44,501.30. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 2.
The second bid that we see there is for a project in the Corral Drive and Sheridan Lake Road water main. Again, the engineer's estimate was $1,350,000 for the project. The staff's recommendation is to award the bid to RCS Construction for the amount of $1,260,430.50.
Could we have a motion, please? Okay, we have a motion and approval for, or we have a motion and a second for approval of the award to RCS Construction for a total dollar amount of $1,260,430.50. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is this a CIP project or particularly?
This is a water enterprise project.
Water
Enterprise fund.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I know where Alderman Weifenbach was going is the fact that the advertising authority was $925,000, but the bid is $1.2 million, and so the funding would be coming out of the enterprise fund. Is that correct, Mr. Tech? Okay. Very good. Motion on the floor is for approval to RCS Construction for $1,260,430.50. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to council items and liaison reports. Item number 66, which is the ad hoc sign code revision task force update, and we're going to have an update from Alderman Costello and Alderman Mason. With that, Mr. Costello, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is, I believe, the second month of the ad hoc committee holding their meetings. The first meetings were very open forum amongst the committee. We allowed public comment, but tried to keep a conversation amongst the committee. It is now to the point where they feel they have enough background information to where they're ready to delve into the sign code itself. They have decided they want to do that starting with page 1 and going by paragraph. The sections where they feel need conversation will have that. The sections that they feel don't, they will not modify. There's been a question as far as what the goals are, and Pat Hamilton took the liberty of calling all 10 of us, and she summarized what the thoughts were that she heard. And there was a list, it was maybe 12 or 15 items long, and the committee will be taking those items into account as they go through this code, in addition to what's come up through the conversation. One issue that came up through the discussion is the length of time that they have afforded them to go through the sign code. It is the belief of the committee that the current deadline of, I believe it's in February, is not enough time for them to diligently go through the sign code, and they're asking for an extension to April 18th, which will give them a total of 6 months from the inception of the committee, as directed by this council, to revise the code and bring it to us. And at that note, I would like to yield to the floor, and I'll also stand for questions.
Very good. I'm going to go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add that this sign code has been working very diligently at looking and researching something that has accumulated over years. Our sign code has been revised numerous times, starting early on. One of the things that I guess I would reemphasize is that's part of the reason why the time extension is coming forward, is that while this has taken years to accumulate and come together under our current sign code, asking this to be revised and look at major sections of 15.28 of our sign code in just a few short months is frankly a daunting task, and I think it's reasonable to move forward to allow a little more time now that we've gotten fully educated on what's before us so that we can move forward. Additionally, I would also thank Alderman Davis for initiating this, and it's a wonderful thing that we can come back to the table and look at this. And furthermore, I would welcome him, as I have continually sought out his advice and counsel for many of the issues that we are faced with. I would welcome him to attend our meetings. And with that, I'll yield to my colleagues. Thank you.
Further comments, go to Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would have a question for Mr. Green.
Go ahead.
Mr. Green, is there a moratorium that's tied to this with the drop deadline of February?
Jason.
I believe there is, but I'm not positive about that. I'd have to review the council's minutes. I apologize.
I'm not going to support any kind of issue to lengthen this out as long as that moratorium is in place. Then my next question would be for Alderman Costello, and that is if we could share in the goals of this committee, if we could maybe get an email or something to the rest of the council just to see what those 15 items were. So.
Yes, certainly, Mr. Weifenbach. And if you would like to direct your question regarding the moratorium to me, I have a little information for you.
Pardon?
If you'd like to ask me a question regarding the moratorium connection.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask Mr. Costello if there's a moratorium that's associated with this timeline.
Mr. Costello.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question, Alderman Weifenbach. Yes, the moratorium is associated with it. It is not the intent of the committee to extend the moratorium to the April 18th date. That is an item of discussion tomorrow, and I expect to come back to the next council meeting with the committee's recommendation on the moratorium.
I understand I appreciate that. I don't care about anybody's recommendation to extend or not extend. I'm not going to support it if we do extend it. When we do these things and we have people's business at hand, they're put their business on hold, and I would appreciate that nobody would do that to me in the same manner. But I also understand that to get this right, as Alderman Mason had alluded to earlier, is that it may take more time, and I'm comfortable with that. But I'm not comfortable extending the moratorium. I think that's a council decision, and I mean, we made that decision. So I'll yield. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments will go to Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to reemphasize that, yes, there has been some discussion with the committee concerning the moratorium, but this is essentially a request to provide us the tool, the time, to do this right. Unfortunately, and I guess I may be reiterating and saying the same thing again here, but This is a fairly large code. It's 1528 is a hefty section of our code, and it took years to come together. And all we're asking for at this point as a committee is to give us adequate time to make proper, well thought out, and judicious recommendations to bring forward to the council so that we have an informed decision to make on what sort of changes we are going to make. This has obviously been an issue that this city has faced for a number of years, and to do this right, I think it would be the responsible thing to do to take the adequate time to get the community input and get the proper information as we proceed forward. And in order to do that, we're going to need the time to do that. And that's all that we're asking tonight. We aren't discussing the moratorium. We're just asking that we have the ability to do this right the first time out of the chute. Thank you.
Further comments, Bonnie Peterson?
I have a question for Alderman Costello. You said you're going to talk with them tomorrow about whether or not they want to continue the moratorium. Is that with the committee? Is that what you're...
Discussion of the moratorium is on tomorrow's agenda, yes.
Okay, it's on tomorrow. Okay, so can you come back at our next council meeting then, and we could discuss this issue about continuing? Because I see that we need to tie the two together so that we get the extension and the moratorium, because if we take off the moratorium, then that could break down discussions. So,
Aaron?
I'm just asking, do you need to have the approval tonight for the extension, or can we do it in January?
No, we don't necessarily need the approval tonight, but I think it would be, it would give the committee, a sense that, as Alderman Mason said, that they will be given the time to go through this in a thoughtful manner. Given that, I understand the desire to wait until the next council meeting, and whatever the direction of the council is, that's what we'll do.
Bonnie, anything else? We'll go next to Sam Quaker.
Move to continue this item to the next Legal and Finance Committee meeting for recommendation.
We have a second. Okay, we have a motion and second to take this to the next Legal and Finance Committee meeting. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Weifenbach. Did you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can support that, and I was going to make the motion to give them adequate time, whatever they felt necessary, but within that motion, allowing the moratorium to expire as scheduled. So, but if we want to move it to a Public Works, I guess that would probably accomplish the same thing.
Just the motion on the floor is Legal and Finance. Okay. Let's go to Alderman Aaron Costello. Motion on the floor is to continue this to the next Legal and Finance Committee meeting. Go ahead.
Make a substitute motion to send this to Public Works.
Okay. We have a second substitute, a second substitute motion, is that correct? Because the first motion was to acknowledge, the second one was to Legal and Finance, so this is the second substitute motion to send it to Public Works, the next Public Works meeting, correct? Okay, very good. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Next item is item number 67, an update on the Big Sky subdivision temporary fixes. This comes from Alderman Sam Quaker. Mr. Quaker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to offer a motion to continue this to the next Public Works meeting.
Okay, we have a motion and second to place this on the next Public Works Committee meeting agenda. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 67A, council salaries. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a motion to place a moratorium on council salaries for 2011, with the proceeds being placed into the council contingency fund. And if I can get a second on that, I'd like to provide a little more detail.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. You still have the floor, sir.
Thank you. In recent weeks, there's been a considerable discussion and activity pertaining to the salaries of specific employees, even been a successful effort to target the mayor and reduce his salary, and in an effort to tie others in with it, the action also brought the salary of the council and reduced by the same percentage. The total result of this action was a savings of less than $7,000 to the city. I voted against that 3% salary reduction, not because I was going to be out roughly $30 a month. I voted against it because it was the right thing to do for the following reasons. First of all, we have a balanced budget. Secondly, there were no specific needs or uses for that money identified. There was simply a cut. There really wasn't any impact. It was $30 a month for me. It was $7,000, less than $7,000 to the city. There was a comment made that we as council needed to feel the pain along with our city employees. I found that to be insulting to our city employees, that my $30 was feeling the pain compared to 3% of a full-time person's full-time employee's salary and the cut that it might be involving them. And it targeted, for all practical purposes, a specific employee. In this case, it happened to be the mayor. But I think we all know if it had been an individual out on the line, we'd have all kinds of problems and all kinds of headlines. I found that to be a problem. The timing itself sends a very dangerous message to all the loyal city employees. Any employee, any salary not covered by a negotiated agreement should be handled as part of the budget, not whenever a group of council people decide to go after a particular employee, no matter who that employee is, top to bottom. I think it sends a message to all non-union employees that their individual incomes could be cut at any time a particular councilman wants to go after them. That's an extremely dangerous message. The morale of the city is in danger. We're blessed with many dedicated and loyal employees, and the action created an environment of uncertainty. We've lost employees recently. Was it a factor in their leaving? I don't know. What other uncertainty is out there? What other questions are being asked? Can I buy Christmas presents for my family? Can I trade for that car? Can I help my daughter go to college next year? I don't know. These questions are being asked by our employees up and down the pay grades. Why? Because of the uncertainty that this council created with its recent pay cuts and the talks of potential freezes. There's been a proposal, in addition to that, to freeze everyone above a certain grade. Why that grade? Has there been a study done? Are all employees above a certain grade overpaid? Or are they just lousy employees once they get to that grade? Do we lose efficiency at that point? Or is it just difficult for some people to understand that we've got people that work for this city who have paid the price to earn their CPA or engineering degree? And they may deserve to make more money than someone at a lesser pay grade. Now, it's been told me that they were talking about freeze, not a cut. Well, if the current plan is to have a 0.75% raise coming towards these employees, and that employee does not get that raise? Folks, let me make it very clear to that employee, that was a cut. That employee took a cut in pay. Point blank, given this council's recent desire to lead by example in taking a pay cut, although it was only 3%, I'm proposing that we as a council take a complete moratorium on our salary for the calendar year 2011. Just for clarification, because I know it's going to come up, state law requires that council people are reimbursed for their expenses. So it does not involve the actual expenses that we would incur. This is just on their salary. Furthermore, in the spirit of leading by example, the money saved by this moratorium would be placed in the mayor and council's contingency fund so that we, the members of this council, can keep a painfully close watch on how our individual dollars are being spent. I yield the floor.
Discussion. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Just a couple of things. We brought up the 22 above for discussion. We didn't move on it. We wanted to know what the council members thought and the mayor thought. This all started by a freeze on council member and mayor pay. So I would ask you the same question. What was the point if we had a balanced budget? What was the point? I'd ask you the same question you're asking us on why we brought discussions forward on other people. Well, why was that brought forward? I keep hearing balanced budget, but I also heard we're about $800,000 short this year. So I believe playing what if is better than guessing later and cutting employees. I also brought forward not hiring the community resource director, which was about $100,000 to $140,000. And then we would save $50,000 by freezing pay this way instead of playing a game on employees and listening to everybody saying they aren't going to get it in 6 months anyway, because we pretty much know that sales tax isn't moving forward. So who's playing the game? Am I wanting to play what if? I do it with my business, so does everybody else. This is not a game for me, and this is not politically correct. This is about looking out for the citizens of Rapid City and the next employees that might have to be cut if we don't have a balanced budget for next year or we go over. What happens? We already started with capital costs. Now we're going into what next? I like discussion. I'll always take the discussion. That did not move forward, and this is not a game. This is something for the citizens that we need to throw forward as many ideas as we have in order to make that grade of letting go of a little bit at a time. That was 140. This is, someone said it's 30 to 50,000. There was percentages on the museum. There was different things for, people kept saying a little bit on the budget. Bring forward as many ideas as you want. The budget's not over. At any time, you can bring anything you want forward. This is about discussion and being straight up. For me, timing and sending messages is about looking out for the citizens. That's my message. And as many cuts and saves that we have to do and freezes in order to make that happen so we don't have to let people go or pay less. That $140,000 was a good pay grade raise for people that we think needed these raises. And they wouldn't have had to wait 6 months or maybe a year to get those raises. So think about that. $50,000 or $30,000 to $50,000 that you don't think is enough. Well, that was $120,000 to $140,000. That's a pay grade for a couple people for some raises. So if we're talking a game, what kind of game was that? That's one person. You saved $120,000 and you could have gave people raises that you thought deserved it. 6-month freeze anyway, and then a guess that we won't have a sales tax raise in the first place. That's what I keep hearing. I don't know. I guess I'll keep saying this. I'm a what if. A little bit of 50 to 120 to another 60, that adds up when you have not a balanced budget in the end. When you have to use undesignated cash and you don't have all that encumbered cash coming back. No, I appreciate the mayor and his passion for bringing things forward, and he did discuss it with it, and we did have a heated discussion. But he discussed it, and I appreciated it. And I'll keep discussing things with him on the dais or otherwise, because that's his job and mine too, to know what we're thinking, what he's thinking, and it's called an opinion of the council and the mayor. This is not a game. If you want to freeze my pay or do whatever, I haven't taken a raise for 3 years. This is not a game. For me, this is about taking care of the people of Rapid City. And if I have to do that, I'm willing to go that far. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to comment on a couple of the remarks made. First off, there was a statement made here that when presenting the 3% cut, we were targeting the mayor. First off, maybe I was lost in what was said, but I thought that it wasn't just the mayor that we were talking about, but it was each and every one of us council members. We decided as a group, with the exception of two of my colleagues, that we were all going to take a cut. So to say that we were targeting one individual person that is a part of this council and the decision-making body, I frankly would say that's logically flawed. And that starts with a false premise based on trying to segregate information, and frankly is just false. The second part that I want to address is saying that we're making a dangerous message and creating that. I, unlike others, am not so audacious as to think that I speak for each and every individual employee in this city. I do not know how they perceived it. But I do know that after the recommendation of the mayor to say that he feels strongly that we need to lead by example, and with the facts that we are faced with of $120 million plus debt in this city, with only $163 million annually of a tax revenue income, that we are sitting at a 75% roughly debt to tax revenue ratio. We are looking at a 767 sales tax deficit as reported by the Rapid City Journal. Those are the facts that we are looking at. And so with that, I was the one. I will take full accountability. I was the one that stood up here, and my first question had to deal with, one, I was concerned about the ability to vote on something where I have a direct pecuniary interest in, and I frankly still feel uncomfortable talking about something where I'm talking about my own salary. And I don't negate the merits of having this discussion, but if it's frankly political spin and rhetoric, then I don't see the merits in it. But if there's a real purpose or there's a real passion here instead of trying to take something and spin it, then I'm all ears. But after the statements that have been made, I see so many false premises and logically flawed statements here that it's hard for me to seriously listen to this and take it seriously. With that, I'll yield the floor and I'll listen to the rest of the comments from my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker. Okay. We have a motion and a second to table. There is no discussion on tabling motions. We go directly to the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Let's take a roll call, please.
Mason. No. Peterson.
Let's do this real quick. The motion on the floor is a tabling motion.
Yes.
So, aye means you want it tabled. No means you do not. Could you start the roll again, please?
Okay. That's okay. Mason. Aye. Peterson. Wyffenbach. Davis. Adcock. Kroger. Costello.
No.
Quaker. Wah. Tudet.
Okay, motion table fails. We're back to the original motion. And Charlene, can you please read the original motion?
Move to place a moratorium on council salaries with funds being placed in the council contingency.
Okay. Further discussion on that motion. Alderman Wyffenbach, did you wish to speak?
Yes,
Alderman
Mr. Mayor,
Wyffenbach.
I do. I appreciate it. And the reason I voted against the tabling motion is I wanted the opportunity to speak. There'd been a comment made about a group of council people targeting one person or whatever the case may be. When I come to a meeting or a council meeting, I expect that I'll represent my ward constituents to the best of my ability and to treat them fairly and to be honest with them and to represent the city in the best manner. This is almost, since I've been here in 3 years, pretty close to the most ludicrous thing that I've ever heard with the intentions involved behind this thing. There's no doubt that this particularly was spurred on by political reasoning, and it's about time the elephant in the room gets introduced here. It originally started from a resolution that the council was to sign on to freeze our salaries, which was a political statement in itself amongst the beginning of it. And you'll all get the opportunity in 6 months to make your statements on how we have represented you in our city. I can guarantee you the salary that I earn of $13,000, or I'm not sure exactly what it is, I don't really pay that much attention to it, has been well earned and well deserved. There's no doubt about it. I brought up the motion to freeze the 22 and above simply to start the conversations, because we don't have honest and open conversations in this particular setting with this administration. We don't get it. We don't get the information necessary to make good decisions. I feel like if I want to bring something forward to save you taxpayers money, I better duck and hide from it. I better watch out because somebody's going to throw something at me. Because talking about saving the taxpayers money, $7,000, $50,000, $60,000, $140,000, 45, 40, and I can go on and on and on with this. But it's killed the messenger. And let me tell you what, I'm fiscally conservative and I'm fiscally responsible with your money. And when I bring these things forward, we had the discussion on legal and finance on Wednesday. It didn't go anywhere, but it did start a conversation, a real good one, a good one that needs to be had in this city. Because I'm telling you, we don't have a balanced budget, we have a shortfall. And we also, we budget from budget to budget, not from budget to real numbers. And I expressed it on Wednesday. If you want to have the conversation with me, if you don't understand how budgets work and how we're spending our money in the community, your money, how we're fiscally responsible with your money, how we sometimes make bad decisions. We sometimes make bad decisions here because we don't quite get all the good information that we need to make a good decision. Then I got to come back up here and explain to you and my constituents why I made a bad decision, why I forced a contract on a group of people when I clearly thought I understood all the decisions in the process, and now I find out later I clearly didn't. And then we come up here and say, are we going to treat everybody fairly? We'll get a 30-minute PowerPoint presentation for the top people in this city, when we get nothing for the little guy. We can go on and on with these conversations, and I got to say, I think the vote was 9-1 to cut our salary by 3%, and I could live with that. It's mainly probably a token, but to show you people out here, my intentions have always been, and they always will be, to serve my constituents, to be a good steward of your money. And I hope, from the conversations I have with most of you, I believe it. Is there, the comment was made about why employees are leaving here? That's a good question. I can guarantee you, I've been here for 2 years, and I know Alderman Hadcock has asked several times to see exit interviews. You think she's got a copy of them yet? maybe in the last day or so, but it took her a long time, a lot of energy to get them. I'm telling you, we are concerned with that, because there's one thing that the city can offer, and that's a good working environment. I think if you enjoy your working environment, it goes a long ways. When we're talking about wages in the city, we're talking about everybody involved. The people that pay the taxes, they've had a lot of hits to them. We've got hospitals that took away. Matter of fact, deducted, one of the biggest employers deducted 3%. They did come back and reinstate that. They aren't getting raises. There's people getting laid off daily. I talk to those people. They have concerns. When I come up here, I don't just poke things out of a hat and say, yeah, let's do this. I think a group of people, 9-1 vote, is definitely a group of people making a statement. Absolutely. I got to believe that. And I can go on and on about my feelings on this matter, but I'm saying I'll support any motion we move forward. But I got to say, we got to be fiscally conservative with $7,000. We've had conversations about council travel, all those things. Those things all add up. If we add them all up, we're into the millions of dollars. I posed, during the budget time, I posed a freeze on hiring new people so we wouldn't have to eliminate positions, so we wouldn't have to freeze salaries. That went about as far as throwing a lead balloon. I'm telling you, I'm not afraid of these discussions in any way, shape, or form. I'll have them today, and when I come back, I'll have them again. But if you really want to understand me, get to know me, call me, talk to me, look at my voting record, and I'm telling you, this one is, I'm not exactly sure where this motivation comes from, but it's clearly out there. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Bill Waugh, who has not had the opportunity to speak yet.
Thank you, Mayor. I seconded this motion because I feel that when we voted on the 3% pay cut, that the 3%, which Alderman Davis had said was $30 a month for councilmen, really didn't affect us. But it did affect the mayor, and he is a city employee. He is elected, but he's still a city employee. And I thought at that time we were sending a message that all of a sudden at a council meeting, we're going to just take somebody's salary and take 3% of them. Maybe we need to take 3%, but there was really no discussion or anything brought up in prior meetings that we needed to look at start cutting city employees. I support our city employees. I support our department heads. I think our salaried folks in the city work hard. I think if you polled the department heads and the salaried people in this city, some of them average 50, 60, 70 hours a week. They work hard for their money. And maybe at some point in time, we need to look and do a study to see if we really need to reevaluate all the salaries. But let's do it in a systematic format and not do it from the seat of our pants up here at the dais. And I voted against the 3% cut. Not that I was all upset about losing 3% of my $13,000 or whatever it is that we're paid as part-time employees of the city. I feel very strongly that before we sit up here as council members representing the citizens of Rapid City, that we have a plan. What are we going to bring forward for the budgeting process? And everything that we say up here does affect the employees and the hourly employees of the city, the salaried employees, and the staff. And we have to be very careful because we're up here to make policy. We're not up here to administer how city government is ran by the mayor and the department heads. So I am in favor of this. Yeah, it's going to take $1,000 away from every council member up here, and it's going to go into the council contingency fund. Well, let me tell you a little story. When I first ran for the city council in 2001, I was 3 months into my campaign when I was informed that we actually did get paid to do this. And I can understand that we should continue to get the technology allowance and the mileage allowance. So I am in favor of this motion, and I will be voting yes on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
I'd like to offer a motion to continue this to the January budget meeting. I forget which date that is.
24th.
January 24th.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this item to the January 24th budget meeting. Any discussion? And that is a substitute motion. Is that correct? Charlene, I want to make procedurally correct. That is our first. Okay, so that is a substitute motion. Discussion, Alderman Quaker, would you like the floor?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that this discussion probably, if we continue to discuss this tonight, it'll probably burn up more of our time. I think this is an important discussion to have, but I want to save time tonight to discuss, excuse me, item number 97, which I think is critical that we all be sharp and not come out of there at 12:30 in the morning to make a decision on that. So I think having this discussion at a later time and having it in January is very appropriate, and I look forward to that discussion at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a substitute motion and a second, and that is to continue this item to the January 24th budget hearing, which will be a special city council meeting. Discussion on that motion, and we'll limit it to the discussion of whether or not it's appropriate to continue it to the 24th. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I'll yield the floor to Dave, and then I'll talk after that if I can, or after the others. Thank you.
Yep. Let's go to Alderman Dave Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderman Quaker, I appreciate your substitute motion. And just a little clarification on a couple of the things that have been said so far. And first of all, for Alderman Weifenbach, because he's really asked the most important question is, what was the motivation in this? I think it was pretty simple. 2 weeks ago, out of nowhere, a 3% cut was introduced. Wasn't part of the budget. I appreciate what Alderman Quaker is introducing tonight. We deal with this in the appropriate manner. This is part of the budget. This is the way that we should be dealing with all city employees' salaries, not pulling this one out of our hat as it was 2 weeks ago. And I don't care how you want to put it and say that it didn't target one person. It was real money. Not that $30 isn't real money to each one of us, but when you've got a full-time employee and you're cutting 3% of a full-time employee's salary versus 3% of a part-time employee's salary, there is a significant difference as to who you're targeting. Whether it was intended or not, the end result was definitely in one place. So if it wasn't intended, some of you guys got the best aim without a scope I've ever seen. The point was, the reason for my motion tonight was very, very simple. As Alderman Weifenbach brought up earlier, he felt the need to make a motion about the grade 22 to get the discussion on the table. This isn't a game, Deb. I'm willing to lay the $1,000 on the table because it's that important. There were a couple of issues that didn't get covered on the 3% that truly I felt needed to be brought to play. The first one was that it came out of nowhere. This is a budget issue. Alderman Quaker's addressing that. The second one was what my motion brought in tonight, and that is, what is the purpose for the cut? Where are we going to put it? If you're going to cut employees' salaries, where are you going to use it and why? I think if we had a defined emergency and we went to the loyal employees of Rapid City, the city of Rapid City, and said, we need to make a cut because, all the employees would get together and say, we're with you. If that's where the money needs to go, we're with you. But when we start freezing and cutting and we don't have a place for it, that doesn't cut it. And that will just demoralize things. So that is the reason that I brought it, and the point is real simple. 3% of $1,000, it's pretty easy to vote yes. In fact, it was very difficult for Bill and I to vote no, because we took some heat over it. We voted against a cut, like everyone else. We put some real money on the table tonight, folks. That was the whole idea here. And if you want to bring this to the budget discussions, I can handle that, because, in fact, we've now accomplished what needed to be done. We've made the point that we don't mess with city employees' salary on a whim. This is serious stuff. This is not a game. And I can certainly support we take this, Sam, to the budget hearing in January without any problem, as long as I understand from all of us that we're not going to pull these percentages and freezes out of our hat on a whim, that we bring them up during the budget hearings where they should be. I yield.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you. A couple of things I wanted to say is that, first off, the council, I felt, let the ball drop that motion went through so fast, because we should have split the question, and I found myself about to suggest that, but we were already voting. So, but that was the council's fault that we did not split the question, because I would have voted for a cut for myself, but I would not have voted a cut for the mayor if we had split the question. I see both sides to this. I see that as the council, the only time that we're together is out here in public. And so it's kind of hard to know what a person thinks or a group of people think when you can only meet here in public. So we need to discuss hard topics, and this is the forum in which we have, and that's how it's set up. And I also wanted to apologize, because when we, at Legal and Finance, I wanted to apologize to the city employees, because in Legal and Finance, the discussion was on freezing, and then I brought up cuts. And that was a poor choice of words. I was just trying to ask the attorney a theoretical question, but that was kind of careless on my part, because city employees need to, well, nobody needs to be worried about, getting their pay cut or anything like that. So it was a careless term for me to use, and so I want to apologize to all the employees. But at the same time, like I said before, there is, it's hard when people work jobs and, to have access to people and to each other, and so we find ourselves kind of in this weird situation, because believe me, there's, you don't have to worry about backroom deals being made, because we can't ever talk to each other unless we're up here on the dais. And so tough decisions or discussions need to be made, and this is our forum. And so, but I do think we need to be careful so that our employees don't get the wrong idea. And I'm sorry that I didn't choose better words. And my reason for seconding this to take this to budget meeting in January is because well, I think it's more appropriate because we have other big issues we need to discuss tonight, so we can put the discussion there. And also that, I can do without the pay, and like Alderman Waugh said, I was 2 months into my campaign before I thought this was a volunteer job, before I realized there was money involved. But I think that to represent the city of Rapid City, that we need people up here that come from all walks of life and have all different kinds of salaries. And so I don't think it's fair to punish some people up here on the dais that maybe really needs the money to pay their bills. And just like I wouldn't freeze anybody's salary or take their whole salary away, I wouldn't want, even though I could live with that, I know not everyone on this dais can. So anyway, I probably said enough, so thanks.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Jordan Mason.
Thank you, Mayor. I as well, the money's not really the issue here, and I could care less. But I am concerned about a few issues that seem to be floating out there that are not being said. One of them is to quote Alderman Davis here, issues that didn't get covered. You know, I'm with him, and I'm happy to see some really passionate discussion here tonight, and I guess I can only question as to why that passion didn't show itself the first time this motion was brought up. And I have to ask that question. If there was concern then, why didn't you speak up then? Why now? I have to also wonder, this also kind of segues into another thing that was touched upon, and issues that didn't get covered, and he mentioned the budget. I think that's really important to bring out, and I can't help but wonder if this has to deal with that. On September 27th of this year, this council made a unified decision to bring a number of items to the budget hearing. Now, on November 22nd, we came to this council, and there was nothing on the agenda. That motion that was made on September 27th clearly didn't make it. So I kind of wonder if we're mixing issues and if there's other issues at stake here. I hear talk about employee salaries and our salaries, and also the mayor. And I'm really kind of wondering, what exactly are we talking about here? Are we talking about our issues? Are we talking about the mayor? Are we talking about employees? And I guess I'm really wondering, what are you getting at? This seems like nothing more than political rhetoric to me, but that's me. And to say it's not a game, I'm still wondering, again, if you're so passionate about this, and I can respect that. I'm passionate about a lot of things, and I fight hard for the things that I'm passionate about. But why now? Why not then? It's a very simple question, and I'd like to hear an answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
Thank you, Mayor. I've heard discussion about the mayor and us and the 3%, but I've never heard the mayor say anything that his $2,700 really put him over the edge, and he's really disappointed in us. I just hear it from Alderman. So I've talked to him before, and he's okay with that, and we're okay with that. So where's the game, and why are we putting this forth on other people? And if you're so passionate, guys, about not getting paid and put it in the council contingency, you didn't have to bring that up here. Do it. Ask Mr. Quaker. He was saying no on the budgets, but he was taking the raise. And I asked the same question. Why you take the raise then? Well, guys, at any time, you don't have to wait till January 14th. You can tell them today that you want to take your 1,000 or whatever your raise is and put it into council contingency. You can tell them tomorrow. That's what I did with my raise, or that 2.5 3 years ago. Take it and do what you said. Budgeting and plan on budgeting, we tried. We tried many things, and obviously we were throwing things out there then, and it came to the point where you just get tired of it. You get tired of trying to make a difference and people just laughing at you and saying it's political. So it's not like we just throw things out there. We really want to make a difference. We want to hear discussion, and maybe we want you to throw some stuff out there too. But when you throw those things out there, make sure that's what you want to do, because you don't have to wait for us to do those kind of things. So take the cut and move forward, and I think the discussion is done. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further lights, and obviously I gave everyone a lot of latitude tonight on this whole discussion. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor of the continuation motion to the January 24th special council meeting, which is the next budget hearing, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We're on to item number 67B, and this is a thank you to the L&I from Alderwoman Deb Hadcock. Alderwoman Hadcock.
Thank you. The mayor and I were at the welcoming for the L&I, and there was 35 teams that were coming this year. Lakota National Invitational is what we're talking about. Brian Brewer had sponsors that came forward, and it was a great meeting and a great session for people to understand about the L&I. I don't think he was trying to be rude to people about it. He just needed some sponsors, and somewhat of how he put it forward, I think some people were offended, but I can tell you that man works very hard for what he does for that tournament, and it's always a successful tournament. They have educational seminars where they bring about 1,000 people in from different states, 35 teams. They have archery contests, powwows. It's a huge event for Rapid City, and I think what he was trying to do, and his message was he needed some help. And this community stepped forward like it always does and brought forth some sponsorships. So I thank this community and Brian Brewer for keeping this process going for the L&I and the Civic Center. I can tell you, I sat there with Jane, and boy, she had all the list, and she said she just loves helping Brian because he's such a nice guy, but there's a big, long list that she has to do from the Civic Center. They put forth a lot of effort to help this tournament to move forward. So I appreciate the Civic Center as well and their participation in the L&I. So thank you again, Council and Mayor, and all the work you did, Mayor Hanks, for moving that forward. And of course, the Year of Unity team, I've been on for about a year. They've done some really good things as well for Rapid City for the Year of Unity, and also Mayor Hanks for helping out our community and the Year of Unity team. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get a motion to acknowledge, please? Okay, we have a motion and a second to acknowledge. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I just want to add my thanks. I will tell you that I know that the Civic Center staff worked extremely hard. I also know that Brian Brewer, the L&I board, truly appreciated the extra effort that went in, and I will tell you, based upon what I heard basically as the tournament was winding down, was they were so impressed with the fact that the City of Rapid City was willing to step up and help them to the degree that they did this year. You know, the PD stepped up, the Civic Center stepped up. Deb mentioned that we were actually at a social event, and it was sort of interesting because big events are expensive, and Brian was asking for help, and almost immediately there were two $5,000 checks presented, one from the CVB, from the bid board. We certainly appreciated that. And the other one, which really came as a surprise to me because I didn't know it was coming, was Tim Gallego. And he personally stepped up and donated another $5,000. So Tim really deserves a lot of kudos. So thank you, Deb, for bringing the L&I up. Oh, and Sound Pro. Was it 5,000 or 500? Okay. And matter of fact, Hetty Ripken, I think, stepped up and wrote a personal check for $500 on the spot. So thank you, everyone. Motion on the floor is to acknowledge. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Let's see, staff items. Items number 68, recommendation on feasibility of placing both pools, the leisure pool and the 50-meter pool at Horseman site. And Mr. Tech, I think you actually had hard copies for us up here. Is that correct? Oh, no, you didn't.
They were linked to the agenda.
Oh, okay.
I'll go ahead and put it on the
go ahead.
board here. Per council direction at last week's meeting, city staff was directed to take a look at the feasibility of locating a leisure pool as well as the tank pool at the Horseman site. First off, I'd like to start by describing what you see in front of you here. The area in the yellow to the left is school-owned property, and the light blue area to the right is city-owned property. As you can see at the far right is the ball field. Kind of center is the existing tank pool. Just to the north of that is the picnic shelter and various parking areas. The only location on site there that is really developable without completely redoing the site is located directly to the south of the existing pool. As you see there, we've sketched in a concept for an area for a leisure pool. As you can see by the contours, the tightness of the contours in the area, there is a severe grade differential. Therefore, a retaining wall would likely have to be constructed to get a leisure pool constructed in that site that would be level enough to accommodate pool activities as well as access to it. In addition to that, the uses on this site require minimum amounts of parking. As you can see, the ball field requires a minimum of 40 parking spots. The existing pool requires approximately 82 parking spots, and assuming that the new leisure pool would be approximately the same size as the existing pool, an additional 82 spots would be required. Therefore, a total of 204 spaces would be required. As you can see, there are only 158 spots, I believe, existing. Therefore, another 46 spots would be required. So really the only other location on site is the lower right there, where 46 parking spots could be included. Some rough numbers on grading. In the upper left part of the exhibit there, you can see that there's going to be substantial grading to be able to locate a pool on the south side of the property there. Approximately $130,000 to remove the roughly 26,000 cubic yards of material to provide a level site. And then, as you can see, that wall is quite a large wall. The height's up to 28 feet in height. So a cost for that retaining wall would be approximately $350,000. While this site plan does allow for the pool to be located, the leisure pool to be located directly south of the existing pool, there are certainly issues with pedestrian access. If someone parks on the lower level, they'll have to walk either up a set of stairs or quite a long distance to get to the upper pool, and vice versa. If you park up above, you've got quite a hike to get down to the lower level. Certainly the entire site could be revised, all the pools, the ball field, everything could be regraded, but you'd be looking at quite a large expense to do that. With that, I entertain any questions that you may have regarding that feasibility.
Any questions? If not, I'm going to go to Alderwoman Deb Hadcock.
I think people do have questions, but I think people need to look at this site and then have questions for Dale and not make a decision on this right now, but to move this, my request would be to move this to Legal and Finance. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yep, we have a motion and a second to take this to the next Legal and Finance Committee meeting and actually have Dale come back and with the numbers. Okay, discussion on that motion. Deb, did you want anything else? Okay, let's see, Alderman Jordan Mason on the continuation motion. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Look forward to this to being continued. I would ask a motion maker if this would be better suited for Public Works, given that it's a project. Just curious.
Yes, so you can make a motion and take it to both committees.
Then I would offer a substitute motion to send it to both committees.
Second.
Okay, we have a substitute motion and a second to actually take this both to Legal and Finance and Public Works next go around. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Aaron Costello.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the council's willingness to look into this further. One thing that's been brought up to me is whether or not the school district has any intention of utilizing the land towards the northwest part of this photo. And I see Jerry Cole here. Perhaps I would like to direct that question towards him, see if he has any knowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did, in preparing for the 2012 process about a year to 2 years ago, talk to the school district about that property. when we, as you can see, found out that our shelter is on their property, partially on their property. So we went and talked to Mike Kenton. At that time, the report from the school had just come out, and they weren't enthused about using that property at that time because Horace Mann was supposed to close. But then my understanding is now it is going to be staying for a while. So we haven't talked to them since that decision.
Okay. Just a reminder, motion on the floor is to continue.
And I appreciate that reminder. I just want to make sure that we're all well armed with information when it comes to the two committees. I'd like to make a friendly amendment that in preparation for the two committees that there be some dialogue with Mike Kenton again to find out how the current intent is of the school district in this very usable section of land.
Okay.
If the motion makers are okay
Well,
with that.
what we'll do is Jericho will do that. Typically, you don't have, you can't amend a continuation motion like that, but
very good.
Mr. Cole will actually be more than happy to have the conversation with Mr. Kenton.
I appreciate that, Mr. Cole. Thank you very much for your knowledge and your efforts.
Or at
And
least
you
I'm-
too, Dale. I appreciate, because this was essentially my directive, and I appreciate all the time and the effort you put into this. This is some very good knowledge, a great visual to help us come to a wise decision. So thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach. There again, just a reminder, the motion on the floor is to continue this to both Public Works and Legal and Finance.
I appreciate it, but we've had some people in the audience all night long listening to our rhetoric, and we appreciate you being patient, and I understand. I'm just hoping that there's a way that we can keep them in the loop on the feasibility of putting the pool here or putting the pool there, because there's some obvious concerns, obviously, for these people. They want to get the most amount of pool, because we're going to do the pool. That's my understanding. And these guys can add a lot to this discussion, and I don't want to keep moving the ball on them. So and I think if there's a way that we can keep them in the loop, maybe they can get with you, Dale, if you're going to be the guy that's going to be heading this discussion up. I think that that'd be appropriate. I don't mind continuing it to Legal and Finance to get the numbers or whatever we want, but let's have a goal in mind for this. I mean, if we're going to go after school land, we should, this has been on the agenda for a while. I'm not necessarily, go ahead, Mr. Mayor. I got a question for Dale.
Go ahead.
What's your question?
More of a comment, actually. Part of the discussion last week was for city staff to take a cursory look at this, and then also, I believe the second part of that was to see how much it would cost for a consultant to take a look at this. I may be recommending next week, Legal and Finance, if we want a lot of public involvement, the stakeholders to have some, it may not be such a bad idea to hire a consultant to take this to the community, to look at other alternatives, spend a little more time on it than we were able to this past week.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks appreciate the latitude. And I've been in conversations with you, Dale, over the years. I have full confidence in your ability to make a good decision in the numbers on those types of things. But if we need to get the consultant involved, I guess that'll be another, I guess, something else to talk about. But I do know, project after project, if we keep the people involved, we're going to use the thing. We're going to get something that's usable. That's my concern, is that we keep them involved in the conversation. I don't know anything about 50-meter pools, but I do know that if the people that use them know a lot more about it than we do, and I have full confidence in your ability to get these numbers close and understand the terrains and those types of things. So thank you. I'll yield.
Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Thank you. That was what I was going to ask you, Dale, was if you had an estimate of what a consultation would be.
Oh, Mr. Tuck. Thank you, Mayor. I would throw out a number of probably $15,000 to do a extensive preliminary investigation in this, come up with a multitude of alternatives, hold some public meetings. That would be a ballpark figure, I would think, for a consultant fee.
Okay. And the other question, you said something about a retaining wall. How tall did you say that wall would likely have to be?
As you can see from the exhibit, the red line just to the north of the leisure pool. In this
Is that
location.
what it's marked, like that 28? That's what you're saying is 28
That's the
feet?
height of the retaining wall, yeah.
Whew. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Motion on the floor is to continue this to both Public Works and Legal and Finance. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to the public hearing items, items 69 through 95 inclusive. Chair would look for a motion to open the public comment. Items 69 through 95 inclusive. We have a motion and a second. Cheryl, did you get? Okay, I know I had a motion here, and I think Alderman Mason seconded it. Okay, that works. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's see. All those in favor of opening the public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Let's see here. We did have one speaker request form on item 88A. 88A. Is Darcy Gunderson still here? Boy, you are a trooper. Item 88A, everyone. And Darce, if you would please identify yourself for the record.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilman, and Councilwomen. My name is Darcy Gunderson.
Can you pull a mic down towards you? Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
My name is Darcy Gunderson. I'm here on behalf of my husband, Clarence Gunderson, to read a statement that he prepared in reference to the first and only assessment notice that he received for his property at 2618 Grandview Drive. Ladies and gentlemen, please accept my apologies for not being here in person, but I am currently serving in Iraq with the U.S. Army as a Force Protection Specialist at Victory Base Complex, Camp Cropper. I wish to object to any assessment against my property for any cleanup. I was not aware of any issues with my rental property at 2618 Grandview Drive in Rapid City until my wife accepted the above reference notice, which is the notice dated December 10th. I have been in Iraq since August 16th of this year, and this property was rented. The renter never notified me of any notice to clean up anything at this property. On December 1st, he vacated the property without giving notice, and my wife is currently in the process of cleaning up the mess he made at the house. I would like to know what was cleaned and who did the cleaning. I would also like to get an invoice from the people who did the cleanup to see exactly what they cleaned and to know if anything was removed. Further, I would like to know when any notice was sent to the renter. Since I was never notified of any cleanup effort, I would like a copy of any cleanup notice and signatures of receipt. I am asking for a continuance of these proceedings until I can review these documents and determine if all procedures were followed in accordance with the ordinance. I reserve the right to consult an attorney to see if legal action is necessary to preserve my rights under the law. Again, I apologize for any inconvenience caused by this situation. It was not intentional, and I will do the right thing. Thank you. Respectfully, Clarence Gunderson. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. We appreciate it. Okay, that was 88A. Okay, I have no further speaker request forms for any items. And now, during this period, we do leave the public hearing items open. We're on to the continued public hearing items, consent items, items 69 through 71 inclusive. Marcia, do we need to pull any of those? Okay. How about from the council? If not, the chair will look for a motion to approve the continued public hearing consent items, items 69 through 71 inclusive, per the recommendations on the printed agenda. We have a motion and second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Does take us to the end of the continued public hearing consent items. Chair would look for a motion to close the public hearing items, items 69 through 95 inclusive. So moved. We have a motion and second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. We are on to the consent public hearing items. These are items 72 through 88. So 72 through 88. That does not include Darcy Gunderson's item, which was 88A. So the chair would ask if we need to remove any items 72 through 88 from the agenda. Seeing none, the chair would ask for a motion to approve the consent public hearing items, items 72 through 88 inclusive. We had a motion. Did we have a second? And a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 88, I don't see Deb in the room. Alderman Weifenbach, could you please read in item number 88A, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 88A, approve resolution number 2010-153B, resolution levying assessment for cleanup of miscellaneous property. Mr. Mayor, I'll yield, and I
was going to say, let me make a recommendation. Evidently, Darcy needs some information, so my recommendation is to approve items 1 through 8 on that list, and to continue item number 9, which we'll pick up later. That gives us the opportunity to get her some documentation.
That'd be my motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and this is for approval of the resolution to assess, levy assessments for cleanup of miscellaneous properties for items 1 through 8. And Jason, are we clear on the motion?
Yes, but just for clarification, effectively what the chair has done here is divided the question. So you're going to take up 1 through 8 separately and then 9 after the fact.
And we'll just continue item number 9. Would that be your recommendation? Okay. So is everyone clear on the motion? We're taking up items 1 through 8 as far as doing the assessment roll. We'll vote on that, and we'll come back, and my recommendation is just continue item number 9, which would be Darcy and Gutterson's. So, motion on the floor is to approve the resolution levying assessment for items 1 through 8. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Mr. Weifenbach, would you like to make a motion to continue item number 9?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to continue item number 9.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to continue item number 9. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That does take us to the end of the consent public hearing calendar. And Darcy, thank you for hanging out with us. It's 10:30. We appreciate you listening to how we do city government. Okay, very good. We are, let's see, on to the non-consent. I'm going to go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach. You had a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm assuming that Darcy's going to come to your office, or you're going to contact her.
Actually, Jeff Barbiero will contact her, and we will get her the appropriate documentation.
It's obviously not the council's intention to hard press somebody if there's a.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I think it's only fair if she did not receive any of the notifications, hasn't had the opportunity to review the bills, they certainly should have that opportunity. So thank you for your comment. We're on to the non-consent public hearing items. These are items 89 through 95. And Alderman Weifenbach, would you read in item number 89?
Number 89, second reading ordinance 5702, an ordinance amending section 1706 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property located at 3887 East Highway 44. And motion for approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. This is item number 89, second reading of ordinance number 5702. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 90, please.
Item number 90, second reading ordinance 5703, an ordinance amending section 1706 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property is requested by City of Rapid City for rezoning from no-use district to mobile home residential for located at 2919, 2925, 2931 Orchard Lane. Motion is for approval.
So we have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. This is one of the items that was continued from the last meeting.
Marcia?
I don't believe this this is the mobile home residential. I think the ones we had concerns about that got continued to your Public Works meeting on the 11th had to do with the floodway zoning district. So my recollection is that the mobile home residential ones you were agreeable to.
Okay, and the status of the flood ones is?
You continued those to, I believe it is the Public Works Committee on the 11th of January and the subsequent council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Motion on the floor. Yes, for approval, item number 90, which is second reading of ordinance number 5703. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 91, please.
Number 91, second reading ordinance 5704, an ordinance amending section 1706, chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Green Design International from rezoning from general commercial district to light industrial district. And Dias Avenue right-of-way and the point of beginning located northeast of the intersection of Dias Avenue and Interstate 90 and south of East Mall Drive. Move approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. This is item number 90. This is the second reading of ordinance number 5704. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 92, please.
Item 92, authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the waiver of right to protest a future assessment for the installation of pavement, curb, gutter, sidewalk, street light, conduit, water, and sewer along Sunridge Road and the section line highway as they abut. The property has been submitted in conjunction with the layout plat to create one lot. The stipulation of approval of variance to subdivision regulations require that the applicant sign a waiver of right to protest any future assessments for installation of the improve as they abut Pennington County, South Dakota, located along the south side of Sunridge Road, west of the intersection of Sunridge Road and Aztec Drive. Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and second for approval. Item number 92, which is a waiver of right to protest. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 93, please.
Item 93, request by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineering for James Steele for variance to subdivision regulations to waive the right requirement to install pavement, curb, gutter, sidewalk, street light, conduit, water, sewer along Sunridge Road and the section line highway, and to waive the requirement to dedicate right-of-way along the section line highway for Chapter 16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, Pennington County, South Dakota, located along the south side of Sunridge Road, west of the intersection of Sunridge Road and Aztec Drive. And this will move approval with stipulations as noted.
Second.
We have a motion and second for approval with stipulations. This is item number 93. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item number 94. please.
94, authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the waiver of right to protest a future assessment for the installation of sewer along a portion of Shelby Avenue as they abut unplatted Government Lot 1, Les Gemstone subdivision, Rapid City, Pennington County, South Dakota, located at east of 5th Street at the current eastern terminus of East Stoomer Road. Move approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. This is item number 94, which is the adoption of a waiver of right to protest. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor. Whoops, I am so sorry. Let's go to, I was on a roll here, Bonnie. Let's go to Alderwoman Bonnie Peterson.
Okay. Thank you. I wanted to ask Marcia, this kind of makes, like what they're going to build there, and why wouldn't they want to run sewer?
Marcia?
My understanding is that there's a break point in this area where sewer goes two different directions. And as such, there's not a need for it at this location. However, the code would require that they obtain this variance, which is the subsequent item before that could go forward.
Okay, Bonnie, anything else?
So are you saying they don't need the sewer at this time?
No, my
Or
understanding.
they won't ever need it?
Marcia?
My understanding is that based on the topography and the fact that
Okay.
It all
runs
flows
downhill.
Okay.
It runs downhill both ways.
Don't want to be a neighbor. Okay, thank you.
Okay, motion on the floor is for approval, dealing with item number 94, which is the approval, authorize the mayor and the finance officer to sign a waiver of right to protest. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. 95, please.
95, a request by Centerline for Lazy P6 Land Company for a variance to subdivision regulations to waive the requirements to install sewer along a portion of Shelby Avenue as per Chapter 1616 in the Rapid City Municipal Code for proposed Lot 3 of North 80 and dedicated public right-of-way, Rapid City, Pennington County, South Dakota, located east of 5th Street at the current eastern terminus of East Stoomer Road. Motion is for approval with stipulations, as noted.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and second for approval with stipulations. Item number 95, any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Bill list, Mr. Barbier.
What's that? Yeah.
Shortest day of the year.
Can all go take a break?
We did have 3 changes to the bill list. Those items that were added were mainline contracting, RCS construction, and Trueform construction, which brought the total bill list to $9,128,343.02, which seems like a large total for the 2-week period, but if you'll notice that we do have one item up above, what is it, about the 8th to 10th item from the top of the page there, you'll notice there's an item that's over $3.2 million. That was the payoff of a state revolving fund loan for tax increment district number 43, which is Red Rock Reservoir. So what that was, we had to get permission from the state to pay that loan off early because we had the money in the tax increment fund. So the interest rate on that was 3.5%. By paying it off early, we saved the interest. So that's a big ticket item in this $9 million.
Okay, very good. Thank you. As amended. Okay?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval as amended, listing the 3 additional payees of mainline RCS in true form for the total dollar amount of $9,128,343.02. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Green, executive session.
Yes, for the purposes permitted by STCL 1-25-2.
Okay, could we have a motion? We have a motion and second to go into executive session for purposes permitted by SDCL 1-25-2. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We're in executive session. Thank you. Okay. We have a motion coming out of executive session. We have a motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item would be I would ask the council to authorize the Civic Center manager to extend an offer to the candidate for the operations manager position at grade 19th, step H.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Next, I'd ask the council to direct the city attorney to direct outside counsel to take an appeal in the Estes versus, or City of Rapid City versus Estes matter.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Next, I would ask the council to direct the city attorney to proceed in accordance with the discussion in executive session on the IAFF matter. That's the firefighter contract.
Yep. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Final item on your agenda, I believe, is action on the AFSCME contract, and I recommend continuance for 2 weeks.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We have a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Civic Center vote, didn't we?
What's that?
I said, obviously, right.